Good morning, everyone. It is December 10th, 2024. It's our 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. It is 9:04. Let the record reflect that we have Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner Walden, Commissioner CUNY in the conference room. Commissioner Jordan is on Zoom, and Commissioner French will be just coming in a little bit late this morning. So you'll see him when he comes in. So we will go ahead and get started and start with Chairman Fox.
Good morning. So my first item for you today is we have finally received our fiscal year 24 Homeland Security Grant contract. The state is very, very slow in managing our contracts right now. But we did finally get it. This particular grant fund will cover our satellites, Starlink satellite connectivity. We are also purchasing equipment for our regional tech rescue team, and then we're getting an ATEP platform for the air support unit, which is a tactical extraction platform for the helicopter. So that's kind of cool. The important thing to know about this contract is with this particular contract, we will no longer be managing subcontracts for the other counties in Region 9. We've done that for years and years and years. And we just decided that it was something we no longer really wanted to do or needed to do. It was considerable time and effort on our part, on Heather Arnold's part. And we just didn't feel that it was necessary for us to do that. So we're no longer going to be managing those subcontracts, and the other counties in the region will be dealing directly with state EMD on those contracts. And then the second item is we have a memorandum of agreement with WSDOT. So about a month ago, the Eastern District Emergency Manager reached out to me and said that they had been doing a review of their agreements and discovered that they did not have one with Spokane County. And so they decided they would like to do that. So I've discussed it with Kyle and Matt, and they're in agreement that it's fine. And so we're just letting you know that that's something we would like to move forward with. And what it does is, in any event where we would need assistance from DOT, it simply expedites the resource provision.
Questions for Chairman? Not see that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
5 minutes, I can do it.
Great. There you go. I love it. Okay. Can you do better?
Oh, yeah, well. I've got 5 items, so I don't know. I can be fast, so.
Clock's running.
Yeah.
Okay, go Kevin.
All right, well, good morning. So the first item we have is kind of a requested change to the sign-on bonus payment structure. If you remember last year or the year before, I think it was last year, we changed the payment structure to where the first half is paid when they're hired, and then the second half is paid after probation on monthly increments, and that's been working really well. But the sheriff wanted to, he's been talking to a lot of the new hires and the laterals that he's hired, and one of the issues or concerns that they have with coming over from an agency where they've been for a period of time to someplace where they're brand new is their vacation and sick time accrual starts over at 0. And so the idea he came up with is to pay out the first half of the hiring bonus the same as we've been paying out, and then the second half give them a leave accrual balance that is about equal to the amount of the second half. And so a lateral would start with they would get the first half of the $25,000 payout, and then they would start with 180 hours of vacation and 130 hours. No, I'm sorry. How am I missing this actually? And then in a sick balance as well, that would equal to the other half of the $25,000. And then an entry level would start with the $5,000 payment, and then 130 hours of vacation and 40 hours of sick.
Yeah, so they don't both have. That's
why. Yep. Okay, yep. That would be right. So so the laterals would have 180 hours of vacation time, and then the entry level would have 130 and then 40 hours. And anyway, it would equal to the amount of the second half payout, but that would give them a leave balance when they first start here instead of starting over at zero, just in case, they're injured or they want to take vacation, they have family vacations planned over the next year or so. So they can do that. We've done some analysis on the costs and the only, so the sick time it's just a bank, right? You can't use that, or you can't sell that sick time back until you've been here for 20 years. So that's not really the issue. The vacation time, you can sell back 80 hours a year. So potentially a ladder will be able to sell back 80 hours of those vacation time per their contract. And then if they left, that time is paid out. So there is a risk that it will cost more money. And then there's also, on the other hand, if they stay and they don't use it, it'll cost less money. So there's kind of a, the analysis we've done shows that it could save money, that it could be equal, or that it could cost a little bit.
So. Yes, guys have questions, I've got thoughts on it.
What was when did they receive, so I understand the proposal.
Yeah.
When did they receive the second half before,
After probation,
which is how many?
it's about a year.
And then it's in increments now too.
Yes. and it's
So,
increments, yeah.
so kind of a little bit of history, before we would pay half on the start date. And then the remaining half after probation ended, which was about 12 months. About a year ago, we switched to, they still get half higher on their first check. And then once they hit probation, for even increments for the next year, they were given the remaining half. And it was kind of a way, hopefully, to tie some retention into it was the goal. And then now what the sheriff's office is proposing, it would be half of the cash upfront still on that first day one. And then the bank of hours would be added to the benefits that would be available for use from day one as well.
So there'd be no more cash payouts. But unless they sold back their time, and that's, that's something that they have in their contract, the deputy sheriff's contract, and so. Without modifying that, we would be able to change that, or if they left, we pay the vacation balance out per the contract as well. So that's the risk. The benefit is they have, and we have no more cash payouts, and if
For
they.
the second half.
For the second half, and if they stay, then it just gets, it comes into their vacation balances and they use it like they normally would. It doesn't really cost more money.
So how long would it take you normally to get to 180 hours?
I don't have the contract in front of
About a
me.
year, just over a
About
year,
a year, yeah. Maybe a little over a year.
180
if not
hours.
using any.
Wow.
That's and so if you're, you think about it, you're someone who's been with an agency for 10 years and you have a vacation balance built up and you start over again, it's gonna take you a year to where you can start using time, so.
Is there a way to just put it in the contract though, that if they leave before that year is over, that they don't get paid out for that 180 hours?
We can modify this language and they are on probation and it'd be something I have to bargain with the union, but I don't.
Yeah.
Think it's possible.
I think we could actually tie it to this because it's specific to the sign-on
Yeah.
bonus itself, that for those bank of hours, if you leave before, maybe it's a year or 2 years, we could definitely put that caveat into this policy for that carve out of hours. Any additional accrued on top, that's where it starts to get messy though, right? Depending on what they take. And our systems are not robust enough to empower us to have all these different components. So it gets a little sticky.
About halfway through their first year of employment, they will have enough hours that they could sell back, and so. Ashley's correct. If we could say you can't sell this bank back or this 80 hours, but let's say they take half of it and then they accrue enough to sell back, they could sell back, there's nothing, yeah.
How many people are we talking
Well, we
about?
have,
You're almost full.
today we have 15 vacancies, so we're talking about 15 people.
And then any positions that open.
And any positions open, and we will have some retirements at the beginning of the year, so 20 people at the most probably.
Okay, because I thought you were getting close to filling.
Oh, yeah, we have, today we are, as of today, with all the people we have in the pipeline to hire and then the positions that we've unfunded or whatever, we have 15 vacancies. Which is, if you remember, we were close to 40 vacancies, so it's
Yeah.
quite a bit less, yes.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah, well, yeah,
I don't know, I guess I would just like to try to have it where they wouldn't. And that's where it's like, I don't know if the cash payment, do they prefer the cash payment up front or would they prefer the the vacation up front, and the cash payment comes at the end of the first year when they're off probation.
I think for your new ones, what we're hearing in HR specifically, especially your entry and even your lateral, they have a lot of them to purchase new uniform items. And they use that first chunk to pay for their new uniform items. And so I would caution us from not paying some sort of cash payment when they first start with us. Especially for our newbies, that's a big chunk of money that they don't have. And so I wouldn't recommend a bank of hours and then later a cash payment. I think we need to have that cash payment upfront for them to be able to purchase those so long as we continue to maintain some sort of sign-on bonus.
We thought about delaying the accrual of the time or the bank of hours to later on, like after probation, but then it would defeat the purpose anyway, because the whole point is to bridge that gap to where they're earning their time while they're on probation, and then, by the time they get off probation, they have a bank of hours, so it makes a lot of sense. We'd just be stacking their bank of hours, so we'd be.
And then this is just for the year because
Yeah, this one.
every year you have to come back.
I believe-
Is this the start of this next year?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is halfway through it.
Yeah, we're mid. So the way that the policy is written, we asked for this through June 30th of 2026.
But, and the idea is, and this is, I'm knocking on wood here for everybody, that we'll be having a different conversation in summer
Yeah.
regarding the sign-on bonus.
Okay,
I can absolutely modify the language, to make it so they can't sell that bank of hours, and that's absolutely no problem.
For like a period of time.
Probably
Yeah.
till probation.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
think that would be, we
Yeah.
could do that, because I don't think it should impact the contract, as you're saying. Because this is additional.
Yes.
About how they accrue as part of the contract is separate from the
Yes.
bonus.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yes.
The only way it would affect the contract is the contract does specify what they can do with their accrued balances. So if once it becomes a balance, the contract says what they can do with it. And so I think that's the only impact, and that'd be easy to address.
In Workday, we actually have the capacity where we could create a different, like this could be vacation sign-on bonus.
Oh, yeah.
In PeopleSoft, we don't have that. So we could still track it in a way. Try not to back us into any scary corners right now as we are
no,
getting into
no, I
the system,
agree.
but.
I mean, I agree, but I think for the first year until they're off probation,
Yep.
that it would be, if they use some of it, they're gonna use some of it, but if they can't buy it back, get paid out for
Like
it.
a forfeiture, basically. So in the event that you terminate your employment
Right.
before.
Which is
the
just what
time-
we're doing with this,
Yep.
the second half sign-on bonus is,
Yes.
if they don't stay, then they don't get it.
I think that's.
So,
yeah,
so I
that'd
mean,
be-
so I think that's what I'm trying to figure out, that we kind of get to that same theory with it,
Just limit the liability to
yes.
the county, yeah. I think that'd be an easy fix.
Because otherwise, we're just giving them basically the cash up front again. And. And I don't think they'll take as much because they're trying to get onboarded and all of that. So I mean, so I.
You would think.
Yes, so,
I didn't take vacation the first year and a half I was here.
yes. So anyways, I would just like to figure out that it's still an incentive for them to stay. And then they get it and then if they need it, it's cashed out.
I will work on it, and Ashley and I will, she'll vet my work, and then we'll present it.
Okay.
And the second item is we're hiring so many people, we kind of ran out of vests, and so the Spokane Police Department gives us some spare external or spare vests, and these are ballistic vests for the trainees to use while they're in training. They just have extra vests, and we ran out, and the manufacturer can't supply us vests fast enough, so we came up with an MOU to let us use some of theirs. It's their property, so that's why we have to have an MOU, and so we're responsible for any damage or anything, but it's no cost other than that.
And how long?
This is just until June 30th of this year. Oh, and I'm sorry. It says June 30th of last year, but I think it's June 30th of this year. My briefing document was wrong.
The summary says through June 30th, 2025.
Yeah, it's cheap at 24 on my briefing.
Oh.
Okay.
Any questions on that? That's okay.
The next one is the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission Officer Wellness Grant. We applied for last year. we were awarded the grant, but then,
Have the body worn camera.
oh, yeah, okay, body worn camera policy. So this is a grant that we applied for through DOJ. We
Keep going on the
Yeah.
next ones.
we received $945,000 and $945,520 for, it's an AI technology that analyzes body cam footage. And what the program is designed to do is to evaluate training and have the effectiveness on the emotional response of officers. So this software that is developed by this company takes all the footage in, and I'm going to, this is a person who doesn't fully understand AI explaining this to you, but it takes all this information and then it develops emotional responses to stimulus, which is, you know, people they interact with or incidents they're dealing with. And it evaluates whether their it evaluates a baseline for their emotional response. And then once they receive the training, which is the next item, it evaluates whether or not the training is effective in lowering emotional response or reactiveness to the stimulus, basically. And so it's a 3-year, 2.5-year program that is going to analyze this data and kind of give us monthly reports on effectiveness of our training, essentially.
And it's a grant that you've gotten.
It is a grant through DOJ, almost $1 million. I mean, you may have seen a press release that the federal government put out a couple weeks ago that we received this grant. So once the federal government awards it, they like to put out, you know, a press release saying that they've given it out, but they haven't gone through the process yet. So this is the first presentation or the first brush for the VOCC. And I can have Tony Enderman, he's kind of running the program. He can come in and give a big presentation over what this all does, but it's pretty intricate. So it's no cost to us.
Happy to move forward with it.
Yep.
Any questions? Commissioner Jordan?
No, it's very exciting. I was just curious, yeah, are we kind of the tip of the spear on this technology? Is it going out to other local governments as well? Just kind of curious where we fit in this, because it seems like a very innovative approach.
It is going out to other agencies, but I believe we are one of the first. And we're one of the, we are one of the first who has the ability to implement it right away and start getting data. So I think we're going to be one of the test cases, so, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And then the other one is another DOJ, it's a COPS grant, and it's for the training that we're going to be implementing. It's a de-escalation crisis response for law enforcement. It's $349,108, and it's to train our deputies on some kind of new motivational interviewing and tactical social interactions. And so it's a kind of a new thing. This is the training that we're going to try to evaluate to see if it has any effect on their response to high stress situations and people in crisis.
Is that the Safer Outcomes Award?
Yes, the Safer Outcomes Award.
Okay. Any questions on that? I'm good. And then you have one last one.
This is the, yes, so this is a grant that we were awarded from the Criminal Justice Training Commission for $13,945. It's an officer wellness grant, so basically it's for gym equipment. And it's taken us about a year to figure out where to put it, but I think we're gonna redesign the Spokane Valley Gym and put the equipment in there if the board authorizes us to accept the money. There's a performance period of about a year, and as you can see, we're about halfway through it because this grant basically fell through the cracks and was sitting waiting for legal review. So, but we'll purchase the equipment, put it in the gym in the valley, and then evaluate the usage of it.
And can any of the sheriff's deputies use
Hey.
the gym in the valley?
Yeah, any sheriff's office employees can use it.
Questions on that?
I can connect you on that later.
Thank you. That is it.
Little longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, questions.
You're gonna blame
And,
me.
and you got me talking about AI, which is.
I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. Thank you, Kevin. Do I see Wes? Oh, there he is.
Yep, I'm here. Well, good morning. This item, we're asking the board to renew an MOU between the prosecutor, the county, and partners with families and children. The purpose of that is to fund a position that's known as the Children's Legal Advocate. Basically, what they do is assist children who need to testify in court while facing the person who allegedly committed a crime against the child. We've got a longstanding relationship with partners. I think that goes back to the 1990s. And this is simply continuing those same services. I met with partners over the summer to go over the contract. There weren't really any significant changes or anything, some housekeeping updates for 2025, but there were not any significant legal changes to that. The fiscal impact is the same as previous years. I think I went back 3 or 4 years. It's hovered around $40,000 for those past few years. Some adjustments for inflation. So in summary, it's pretty short and sweet. There's nothing new. I don't have any legal concerns or anything. So this is just continuing the same services with the same MOU. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Pretty easy. Okay, that takes Kyle.
Sure. As you all may or may not be aware, Board of County Commissioners owns a short trek section of rail line out on the West Plains known as the Geiger Spur. It's approximately 6 miles long. It runs from McFarland along McFarland Avenue, basically beginning at Hayford, kind of in that industrial area west of the airport. Runs about 2.5 miles to the west towards Fairchild Air Force Base, and then turns south, crossing the 902 highway and intersects with a section of Washtenaw Short Line Railroad just to the south. There's been a desire to, we haven't had an agreement in place since 2018 with our operator, formerly known as Jaguar, now the Washington Eastern Railroad. And they have recently negotiated a long-term lease with the WashDOT spur. So they also operate the spur that the Geiger Spur comes into for short line rail service. And there's a desire, they requested to extend the duration of their lease agreement to match the WashDOT agreement so that there was continuity of service and certainty for any potential developers utilizing the spur. So the proposed amendment would extend the lease to a total of 25 years back from the date of signing. So that would run it all the way out through 2043. We like to clean up a few things in the agreement. So there was a CPI adjustment banked into it that was kind of an obscure rail CPI. We'd like to switch that over to a flat 3% annual escalation. That rent amount is variable. It's based on the rail traffic, the number of cars annually that we see a year. Right now, we're still at the low end of that agreement. So we roughly bring in about $34,000 a year. 2024 to date, they've had 205 cars. So it's like, up to 300 cars at a certain rental rate, 300 to 500, it escalates, and so on and so forth as growth increases up there. The rents are directed to be reprogrammed back into the maintenance or rehabilitation of the rail line after our administrative expenses are recovered. So for just kind of round numbers for the board, since 2018, total revenues are about $236,000. We have about 170,000 minus a repair we had to make this year. There was an issue with the rail crossing at Highway 902 that we had to go out and do kind of some emergency repairs on this year. So roughly we have total revenue to date net around 140,000. Randy I have the exact number from Randy somewhere, but not on me at the moment. Currently this is kind of all washed in the general fund. I shouldn't say washed, it is just lumped into the general fund would be a way, a more accurate way of saying it.
So it's
So
not part of county roads fund.
no, this is a board-owned asset and the revenues go right back into the general fund. I would recommend going into 2025 that we keep those funds separate in a special revenue fund so that everything is accounted for and tracked a little cleaner. And we know what's in that pot of money, which we would use for either a major repair or as potential match for a FRAP grant is one of the eligible programs. I think we got one of those, but for my time to improve about half the rail. So of the 6 miles, about 3 of it's in really good shape. 3 of it's in tired shape. So that would be something we would use those match funds for potentially, is to rehabilitate that more dilapidated portion of the rail line.
How much would that cost?
I think it's probably in the million 3 range. So, you know, if we, in a couple of years, we secured that and we had 200 grand in the bank, that would be about the match we would need at a 13% match on a FRAP grant, if we were successful in acquiring
And are those grants through the federal or state?
federal.
And they're specific for rail line, so it's not, doesn't take away from our other opportunities
Exactly.
for roads.
We haven't been wildly competitive on that. We've taken a swing once in the past, but I think as we continue to move forward and see further growth out there, we might have a more compelling case to make on that. So there's just the last bullet there. There were a couple exhibits that were part of the original agreement, but they weren't recorded properly. So we're making sure that those are recorded with this amendment. The proud owners of some short line rail.
No. I mean, it is, I guess I just, you know, is that enough revenue that's generated to care for the asset? It's my concern.
Yeah, that's a concern. The operator himself, they have a maintenance obligation in one of those exhibits that in there. So the routine tie replacement and some of the bolt down plates, they are required to do. And so they kind of keep it, and they're motivated to keep it functional for them. It's one of those things where to make a long-term, you know, investment that would probably make that other half of rail last another 50 years. We would need some grant funding to do that. So
That's just my only concern is that if we're doing this 25-year lease and we're on the hook for maintaining it.
Yeah.
It's functional
they have kind of more the maintenance portion. We have more the capital portion. You know, we don't have a guarantee of service on it. However, this is the other thing that you'll notice in there, sorry, I forgot to mention it, is that whenever we do contracts in excess of 5 years of length per legal guidance, we reserve the right to reopen it and revisit all the rates that are in that. So should we see more growth and something change into the future, those 5-year increments start at the original. So in 2028, we could relook at the rate schedule if the board wanted to.
Yeah, that's good to know that that's in there because I think that I just don't know. You know what 25 years looks like out in the future, so.
Exactly. And it's a good operator. They do a lot of short line in our region. There's not a lot of short line operators in our region. So they've been good to work with.
Talking about extending the contract with the Jaguar. Yeah, did you get the background in terms of why we're harmonizing this with the state?
That we were trying to harmonize with the state, not
Yeah.
any of the other potential opportunities out there.
One of the things that's driving this is Suprema is trying to secure, making sure that they've got access to rail for the period of time. And the state has extended the contract with Jaguar to be able to accommodate that. But it doesn't mean anything if our contract doesn't harmonize with the state. So that's one of the things it does, is it harmonizes with the state. And then that way there's assurance that whoever locates on that line will have access to rail and stuff. So that's the driver.
one of the benefits, as Kyle highlighted, of segregating these out is to the extent that we have to do capital improvements or we want to chase some grant dollars. Right now, those dollars have just fall into the reserves in the general fund. So to the extent that revenues have exceeded our expenditures in any given year, we don't have any access to the dollars that have grown over time in the general fund to be able to bring those out, see how it shows how the operations are financially performing. And two, it gives the ability to have some dollars set aside for those future things. We had an emergency repair that we had to do just recently, right? On it. So being able to have those bucket of dollars that are specific to the Geiger score, I think is important to have.
And so this line that is going into the transload that Supreme is locating on, ultimately that line will get extended all the way down to Hayford Road. I'm now working with a manufacturer that wants to locate a 150-acre manufacturing operation just right down the line from Suprema. So, we'll just kind of, with businesses coming on, we'll just kind of keep extending that line.
So, yeah, so I think, as we do this, that yes, making a special revenue fund, so that way we know exactly how much money is really there or not there. To really know what the future, holds for it would be advantageous. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay, gonna take us to George and Chris. You're still here, yeah. It's all good.
Well, good morning. We're here to brief on a contract that you all approved earlier this year. Chris has been working with one of our community partners on this. And so I'll turn the time over to Chris.
Yeah, thank you. So on 11/14, we briefed the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee on the progress of all of our contracts. One contract in particular was brought up with concern, which was the Yo-Yo Spokane outreach project that had not yet begun project operations. So we discussed that with the advisory committee and discussed potential options. The advisory committee did recommend that the Board of County Commissioners terminate the contract and reallocate those funds to a currently operational project or something that could be able to be spent before June 30th of 2025. I haven't been able to, as y'all probably have in your briefing documents, I do have some narrative and explanations on some types of contact that I've attempted with Yo-Yo Spokane. I also will add that I was able to talk with the executive director yesterday and discuss kind of the contract, the struggles that they had, and potential for future funding should they choose to pursue with some additional support. So this would just be a briefing session. If there were no concerns with this contract termination, we would move to put for legislative approval to reallocate the funds next week. And then on sometime around January 7th, have a plan in front of you guys for legislative approval for a new project or for a newly funded project.
I just want to confirm, so.
Yes.
So yes, so I think when this came before us, from all the committee, the recommendations, we did have some concerns because it was a new group and the amount of money that they were getting. So then we went back to the committee and they were the ones who said they wanted to change the award amount. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Because we didn't cancel the contract, we just changed the award amount.
Correct. I believe the original award amount was almost like $400,000 and it was reduced down to $193,000.
Okay, and so then with that 193,000, they're still not meeting the requirements.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so what are we asking in this contract, I guess, with him?
There would be no new contract. This contract would be terminated, so we would cease operations, yes.
And have they done anything?
No, ma'am, no.
So.
No, it would be pretty much a clean break. No project operations have started. We haven't even haven't provided provided them any funds. They haven't met the basic project startup
Okay.
requirements.
So they haven't even started the contracts. Okay, that's why I just want to make sure that they hadn't already committed some of those funds or expended some of those funds and then
Not at all. No.
an issue. So, okay, so we'd just be canceling this contract. This was all. And then you're gonna do another, you're gonna reallocate those funds to a different organization through the committee.
Correct. Yeah. But
Well,
I'm sorry,
they'll
not
come
through the
back.
committee, through the Board of County Commissioners. So I would,
Are you taking it back to the committee for their recommendation? Or are you guys just making a determination and come back to us?
I think really part of what's going on is timing on this, so we've got to get that money spent by 6:30 of 25. So one of the things we were looking at is an evaluation of our existing portfolio, and is there an opportunity to fund some of those other projects or activities with some additional funding? So we've been in conversation with the city of Spokane Valley with their homeless outreach program. They're adding some additional FTEs to have a broader reach. And I think they're going to a 24/7 model, or at least a 7-day-a-week model. And so we reached out to the city administration over there to say, was there an opportunity to be able to utilize these resources to support that program? So that's what we're looking at right now as our,
So I know part of what I thought they were supposed to be doing is reaching out to some of the rural communities as well. And so again, I'm gonna be stating, concern for the rural communities. And so just knowing the Valley Partners has changed their name, but they do a lot of outreach to the rural communities as well. So I mean, I would just want to make sure that those funds are getting outreached to the rural communities, because I think that's what the intent of the original contract was supposed to be for.
I think, yes, and with a particular focus on indigenous populations. I will say that we do have the outreach program with SNAP that is primarily focused on those rural communities. So, and Chris and I met with SNAP 3 or 4 weeks ago to have a conversation about how we can improve that access out into the rural communities. So mindful of that.
Like I said, I just know Valley, I don't know what their new name is. I apologize.
Partners of Inland North.
Partners of Inland Northwest. Well, I didn't know they changed. Yeah, they changed their name about a year ago. But, because I do know they received some funding from us as well, or did they not through them?
They received a smaller grant to help out with their food bank. In the past, the city of Spokane Valley had partnered with partners to do some of their homeless outreach. But they're currently under contract with Frontier Behavioral Health to provide those outreach services. So in partnership with their local law enforcement outreach program.
Well, that's part of the code employee teams. Right. But they get funding for the code employee teams. So I don't want to make sure this funding gets used in the right way. So. Amber?
So just to be clear, the funding is supposed to be for outreach and connecting those who are unhoused to services.
correct.
But it's really an outreach purpose, not operating like a shelter.
Correct.
Okay. So you'll be looking at other contracts we have with folks who do that in the county, and whether or not this could supplement and reach more people.
Yeah, I think there's a balance too between being able to spend the funds before 6:30 as well. So finding a project that obviously sticks to the intent of the original board.
He's trying to hire a new person and get them
Correct.
trained with it. You only have 6 months to spend the funds.
Yeah, so definitely on the back foot there, but trying to find the balance between the commissioner's original intent with the outreach project, with also being able to spend the funds, consolidated homeless grant before June.
Thank you.
So if no further questions, we will potentially have, we will have the legislative action for you guys next week for the termination of this contract, I believe, and shortly.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Okay, that's gonna take us, I guess, George, you're gonna stay. Bring your Heather. Chris, you're rotating it around.
I know, I'm just finding a place to sit, I think.
Chris, you can sit up here as well.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We
wanted to come talk to you guys this morning as we are getting ready to implement and go live with Workday. There is going to be some downtime between as PeopleSoft goes offline and Workday comes online. As we know, between Georgia Shop, Justin Shop, and all of our ARP and outside agencies, though we have multiple agencies that struggle to be able to wait with their 30-day timeline for reimbursement. So we expect that you guys will be hearing complaints. PeopleSoft, last day for entry of our invoices is December 20th. At this time, Workday is expected to come online January 17th. At that point, we will have a backlog. All the invoices that have come in since then will need to be entered. So these people are likely not looking at getting payment until end of January, first part of February. I have been communicating with all of the ARP and outside agencies since March, when we had the June and July go live dates. We've communicated verbally, we've communicated via email. So not only with the executive directors, but with the finance people, they are very well aware that this is coming. They've had formal communication via email to both groups in November and December. But we wanted you guys to be aware that that communication has happened. So when you're getting calls or when you're getting stopped or when you're out and about, that communication has happened. George can share the communication he's had, and then Justin can share his communication.
Yeah, we've been, we've kind of got a two-prong approach. So we've sent out the emails. We know those go to executive directors and sometimes to, depending on the size of the organization, the CFO. But there may be a clerical person that does not get those emails. So what we've done is within our system where they submit the invoices through, we put up kind of a red flag notice, red font saying, just a reminder that on this date and at this time. So we've really tried to be conscious, as Heather has, with our sub-recipients to let them know. So there is awareness out there, but we know that folks do, if there's delays in payments, they generally come knocking on your door. So we want to make sure that you all are aware that we've had these communications with the agencies and had multiple different approaches. Starting tomorrow, Chris does his 3-2-1 countdown email. That's a follow-up to the emails that he's done already. So yeah, that's our approach that we've had in our communication with folks.
Yeah, and for our contracts, we've notified our providers. It's an ongoing compensation. We do a lot of contract amendments, as you guys have seen, in the various times that we've updated, and we've sent an end of year notice in preparation. I think the challenge for some of the smaller ones is coincides with some of the state's release of information about potential reductions in costs. So just the coinciding of, hey, you're going to be delayed, and also as we looked at the lead session, you might have is giving some people some anxiety, especially smaller agencies that rely because they're limited on their cash flow for that 30 to 90-day period. So we're just trying to allay those fears, but I don't doubt that some may express themselves more verbally this season.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the outreach, because I know it is important to all those agencies and sub-recipients and that happens. I guess what's Workday, okay, so from the 20th to the 17th, because we haven't had that discussion, you're gonna know that that's what was happening. So then, yeah, I have a lot of questions on Workday that I guess I'll ask not during this meeting. So just to get up to speed and know what's happening with it would be nice to know. So yeah, if we get any calls, then we just direct them to you, and you can provide the emails that you sent. All the I would just have that available, that you've got the emails ready, that if you send something in paper, you know, just have that chronological order of when you contacted to ensure that they knew that this was going to be happening. Because I know they do rely on the county, and you guys are so great at paying on time and getting the money to them. I mean, all of you. So I really appreciate that, because there's other government entities in town that don't always do that. And so I hear that from some of the nonprofits that I deal with. So thank you for you guys always being timely and then for letting them know and really giving them the heads up that this is coming. So hopefully it won't be too much of a burden and we'll get them paid as quickly as possible.
So are you encouraging people to get in their invoices then before the 20th?
Correct. We requested
will
that
be
their
able to
November
pay.
invoices get in. Ideally, we wanted them in by Friday, Monday, Tuesday of this week, so that we had proper time to review and get them approved internally through our staff before getting them entered, so that they could process and give AP proper time to do its thing. But of course,
So
we'll
they'll
have
continue
ones
to be
trickling
processed.
in.
They'll be anything that gets in by like today
Yes,
will be processed.
correct.
So checks will be sent out.
Yes.
Okay. Justin, you look.
that is, Yes,
Okay,
that is
your
the
eyes
goal.
got real big. Okay.
no, that is the goal.
So,
Okay.
so long as all the documentation, and everything, that's an important caveat, if we have any.
Right, no, I mean, if there's a question or something was missing, obviously. But if everything is accurate and you have checked it off, payments are still going out from the county. Even though you just can't enter anything new into the system for that.
Correct. New voucher entry is
Okay.
cut off on December 20th.
So I assume anything that's, I'm just assuming, anything that's in the system by the 20th will continue to be processed, you know, in that next check run, or warrant run.
Right.
And then the rest will wait till after the first of the year. So, Commissioner Jordan.
I was just gonna second Commissioner CUNY's comment and just ask, is there any idea for when the board might be brought more up to speed on the status of Workday? In the implementation, I just kind of feel like I'm lacking information about where we're at.
Well, Ashley's here, so I'm thinking she's gonna come join us and give you an update.
Sorry, no, you're good.
Yeah, so we're heading down toward a go live for the financial section. So as you guys maybe recall, we have multiple phases. Finance is phase 1. The HR payroll side is phase 2. As we head into January, we are heading toward go live for finance. So what we're doing right now is all of the cleanup essentially on the back end for PeopleSoft so that we can flip that switch. We have been discussing it in the elected officials and department head meetings. So we'll continue to do that, but we can bring another presentation into this one as well. But everything is continuing to push forward for a January transition from PeopleSoft to Workday for financials. We will stay in payroll and HR in PeopleSoft until July. And so we'll be running dual systems from a payroll perspective. But our IT team has built all of the bridges, all of the things that need to happen for the data to flow between the two systems while we're still working in both. We will still have access and reporting available in PeopleSoft for our financial users. So it's not like we're cut off, you have no access to anything. So the team has done really well with making sure that while Workday will be our future system of record, we're not losing all of the data from PeopleSoft and the access to it. So it's been a lot of transition, a lot of moving pieces, but we're continuing to work through it. The one issue that we continue to have, but the treasurer's office has done amazing with putting some things around it, some workplace around it, is just the Teller system. Teller will also be interfacing with Workday in the future. We continue to have issues from getting some of the information we need from them. And so Krista Rice has been an absolute rock star. If you see her, thank her, please, for helping that process, for directly interfacing with them, and then for putting processes in place in the interim until we can lift that up completely. So things are on track, things are going well. If you'd like more in-depth conversation, I'm happy to answer questions, or a more in-depth presentation, we can bring that into this. I think it was just last month we had Vicki Dalton and Tessa do a presentation on kind of where we were at, where things were in the elected official department head meeting. But we're happy to bring it here if you guys would like it in this meeting as well in the future.
I don't know if all the commissioners would, I would certainly like to get briefed on it and like to see kind of too, as we're starting to move forward, you know, and January's fine. But to kind of see, yes, what I everyone keeps talking about what Workday is gonna do, but we haven't seen what that's gonna do, so I think it'd be good for us to get that. Idea of what reporting is now gonna be available and how are we gonna be. Cause it's supposed to be more on time data and information versus PeopleSoft was not, and so I'm personally curious to know, so I don't know
Yeah.
if other commissioners are.
That'd be great.
Yep, yeah, and once it's all built out and we're live, you as commissioners have access to Workday, every employee does. And so you will have dashboards reporting available based on the security group and the level that you're in. So all of that will be available. It's just not yet, right? Because we're not on yet. So once we get there, we get it flipped on. We can do that. We're definitely focusing right now on the training aspect, getting everybody trained, the trainers done, making sure everybody knows what they're doing, who's actually going to be utilizing that system for daily transactions. So that's really been the bulk of where our team is focusing, especially because the same people who have been leads are the same people who are trainers, are the same people who are working in the system. So it's been a really amazing lift from our team, but we've really been focusing on which groups need the information now before we're moving on to the next ones to make sure that when we go live, the people that are actually doing transactions in the system understand that system well enough that they can continue to do their job. So I apologize for not having it here. We've just been really kind of looking at it, which group at which time do we need to get the training to make sure that we're ready for them to be successful in that system.
So are you doing with HR payroll being July, is it parallel then in the two systems? Or I guess how are we ensuring, I know Vicky's always been, very worried about how do we ensure that payroll is being done properly in Workday before we go into Workday? So
we will run parallel. So as part of, before we go live, we have 3 parallels that the payroll team will run. We run it in PeopleSoft, right? So it'll be May, I think, time schedule off the top of my head, or we'll be doing payrolls. But before that, we're also testing. So there are multiple phases where it's a build and a test and a build and a test. We're already in that process. We've already been working through phase 2 with payroll. Payroll has regular calls. We're already working through that. The official payroll parallels will go before we actually do the system, but they're already working through a lot of those details and testing right now. And Vicky is intimately on these, like she's on the call, she's on the steering committee. We've carved out space for Veronica to have time and her team to have time with Guidehouse. So all of those things are in process and Vicky is a huge part of it. Yeah.
Commissioner Jordan.
Just back to the original, thanks for that update, Ashley. Just was trying to remind myself the 30-day time frame for payments. Is that typically contractual? Is it an internal policy? Where does that come from?
Typically, that's just been our contractual 30 days. Depending on the contract, if it is a cost reimbursement contract that comes from the feds or from the state, by RCW, we could technically take 30 days after we receive reimbursement from the state or the federal government. We don't, that hasn't been our policy. We typically try to reimburse within 30 days. That's been our contractual requirement.
And are we expecting that we should, are we expecting a significant delay, or that we are optimistic we'll be on schedule, but we're just kind of covering the contingencies? How confident are we that we'll be mostly on track with the payments?
I think that there's a likelihood that we're going to encounter a delay just because of the amount of data that's going to get entered. If everything goes exactly perfect and the system is working 100% how we expect, on January 17th, there is going to be a lot of invoices, not just subrecipient, but all vendor payments that are going to get uploaded. That is going to be a heavy lift for our accounts payable team to be authorizing, and all the different levels of approvals that need to go through. So our purchasing, budget office, all of that. It's going to take additional time to just get through all those levels of approvals and get them approved. I would expect it's probably going to add a typical week to 10 days to what we do now. If we encounter any issues getting the system up, people encounter issues getting invoices entered, it's going to add time.
Thank you.
And I will say this is pretty standard. So I've done this a couple times at other employers. There's typically a blackout period. There's typically a couple week delay on the initial start. So while I understand it's often painful for the people we impact, right? Because they didn't choose to go through this. This is pretty standard when it comes to flipping on a new system to have that blackout period and then a little bit of a catch up time. Our accounts payable staff, our grant staff, our budget staff, they are small but mighty workforces. So there definitely is going to be a lot of just not a lot of extra time, but there will be some extra time because when you only have a couple of people that are even able to do that work, it's just going to take a little bit for them to process through it all.
Thank you. And I think Vicky's office is down staffed too, so it's making it even a little more challenging. So definitely appreciate all the staff that's working hard to make it happen. So. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again. Still here. Okay. Hey, welcome, Gil. Team.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm here to talk about where we are status-wise with the infrastructure modifications to the county campus that we propose sometime back to go to the contract phase. So we went through a painstaking FIM by FIM process. We can go over the actual infrastructure recap. Next slide. So these are the work improvements that we'll be doing. We're actually going to this was to convert the high pressure steam boiler system that we have right now and change it over to a hydronic system. The other one was to convert domestic hot water systems that we presently heat water with high pressure steam and actually centrally locate it with the hydronic plant. Fan wall system upgrades. This is to replace all the mechanical components inside some of the air handlers that are just old, failing, hard to find parts for. We targeted all the ones on our list when we did our review, and they're the higher energy consumers. So we targeted those. The air handler upgrades and replacement. Some of them they weren't able to actually even engineer in a fan wall system. They're so old, so we will be doing complete air handler replacements. So that means we'll get higher efficiency, faster energy startups on them, cleaner air. So these will be a real plus to the county. The control side of it for the Metasys, we'll upgrade it with the Open Blue. That way we'll see our energy usage real time. So if we do have a situation where we are actually going over set limits that we'll put on these pieces of equipment, we'll actually get alarms for them right away. The chiller plant, again, upgrade the pumps on the system, the piping and the controls for that. Going through our tuning is such a mechanical process right now. It's really kind of like the old mechanic that finds the sweet spot on the carburetor. That's kind of the same way our chiller plant is right now, but we'll totally automate that. It'll be controlled by our energy management system. And then of course the switch gear. This is replacing the 3 switchgear units in our largest buildings, the courthouse here, the public safety building, and for the jail, which the jail is getting to the point where the jail believe it or not, between the three buildings. It was because of the climate control conditions, they engineered the switchgear in. It's corroding really fast. A lot of the actual bucket switches on it, there was no climate control conditions where it was located, and they've degraded very, very fast. So these are the items that we targeted into our FIMS as part of this contract, and they are all spelled out in the contract along with the energy savings that you'll see. Next slide. So these are the financials, and I'm going to turn this over to Randy.
I've got a spreadsheet. So the upper left corner, these are just different financing options for this, which of course, depending on how much you leave in debt, determines, what your debt payments are. So we actually have a spreadsheet. So or we can send it to you later, but you can play around and change those numbers. Like, for example, right now we've got about 10 point, or as Jeff and Heather will be talking later today, we have about 10.3 million of ARP that we could use. That is unused interest income, some unused indirects, and any turnbacks. We will, for example, on the public safety building, this whole project is $35.8 million. About 10.7 of that is related to the public safety building. And of that, 33% of that is rented by the city of Spokane. So charging them back for their share of that, that would give us about 3.5 million just in that building. They also have space, of course, in the courthouse, much about, 10, 11%. And they have, of course, the jail, any jail charges based upon their population that takes up nights. But I just put in the public safety building for now.
Do we know whether the city has the money to pay for their share?
We do not.
We do not. Okay,
We do not know that.
all right.
It is you
Part
can
of the
put,
Yeah.
Okay.
It is in the agreement.
I know it's in the agreement, but the question is it in the bank? And that's,
Yeah.
after last night, I don't know if there's anything in the bank other than months.
and so with this, you could put 0 in there and use that as found money. But
Second, Commissioner Jordan.
So I haven't read the current joint use agreement. Would this be an addition to or a change to, or is this something that's already baked into the agreement that exists today?
Commissioner, the agreement is, one could infer that capital recovery is part of the agreement. Because in talking with our civil team back in June of this year, we wanted to be more explicit that it was a recoverable cost, which is what prompted us to send notice to the city of our, we had to do a 6-month notice in the agreement saying, here's the amendments we want to make with the interlocal agreement that would be up for renewal on January 1 of 2025. So we're trying to make it more explicit in there, just so one is not inferring that it is or is not covered in it.
okay, and then of course we have fund balance and debt that we can use. And on the spreadsheet, and I can send it to you, if you change any of those 4 numbers, actually the debt number changes if you change any of the first 3 numbers. That then drives into what a rough estimate of debt calculation would be on the top left there. Right now, if the debt was 11.5, that annual payment for 20 years would be about $844,000. On average, the project will save us about $550,000 a year beginning in year 4 once it's completed. Again, debt, you probably wouldn't go out for that until late 25 or 26.
So really, you're not going to have any debt payments till probably year 3 of the project anyway. So there may be a 1-year gap there where you don't have any project savings to cover debt. But if you use that project savings and just left your budget flat and use those savings to pay for debt service, this is the shortfall that will calculate. And of course, you could use REIT for that if you wanted to. And so what I've shown here is what your REIT capacity is. So our annual collections, we're projecting about $3.6 million for REIT 1. We currently have 3 debt service payments that go against REIT 1. The fairgrounds debt goes through 2033. That's about $229,000 a year. Scraps goes through 2034, $440. And the small arms range goes through 2041 at $1177, giving us an annual capacity of $1,754 if we only used it for debt service. Now, we also use REIT 1 for other things, such as parks or repairs on the campus or remodels on the campus. But this just shows you if you used it only for debt, you'd have about $1,750,000 of capacity, showing that if your annual shortfall is $294, that would move you down to about $1,500,000, $1,400,000, $1,500,000 in annual things that you could use for other things for the next 20 years. And then, of course, you do have debt flowing off. Also, the unassigned fund balance, this is a projection of where we'll be at the end of the year. What I did here is looked at where we're at year to date, used December of 23 to help project where we will be in December of 24. And again, fund balance changes because we have things that are committed, we have things that are assigned, we have things that are restricted. I made an estimate of some of those things. For example, I knew we paid the Costco debt, so that $5 million isn't going to have to be committed next year. I know we've paid $5 million to the ballpark, so that $5 million isn't going to have to be committed next year. But we did do our 2019 C, where we defeased those bonds, and so we have some cash that we've used for that. It's about $10 million, where other entities owe us that money. So that is money we can't use. So those kind of offset each other. So I'm planning that our unassigned fund balance will be very close to where we were at the end of last year. Last year it was at $37 million at the end of 23. If you used, in this case, 10.1 million, or if you change that number up above to 10 million, that would leave you right around 30 million of unassigned balance remaining. Again, the numbers on the top left, those are things that you can change, play with, see where you're comfortable. You know, you may not want to use all of the ARP. This slide shows 10.7. The updated number is 10.3 that Jeff gave me last night. So again, these are just a way for you to say, how do I pay for it? And that upper left kind of gives you the structure to make those changes.
Randy, what contemplated under the Johnson Control Agreement, what does the payment structure look like for them annually?
It is fairly close to 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So it is approximately 12 million in year 1, which would be 2025, is approximately 12 million in year 2, which would be 26, and approximately 12 million in year 3, which is 27. So we don't need to go out to bond if you use debt service right away. We could use our existing fund balance and the cash we have in 010, and we could, if you want to, you could always refund that if you decided to do a larger debt offering.
And on those 1/3, 1/3 payments, is it at the end of the year? Is it
No, it's throughout the year. So it's as you're ordering equipment or buying equipment. They have a structure in the I don't know if it's in the contract as a
No, we have it as a
They
a
gave
table,
us a table of, this is about when the payments would be due.
and we would get another table. So once we move forward and we get the schedule of values, that will start that time limit of when the billings will come out.
And this contract that Gil has is I'm gonna say it wrong.
ESPC.
It's an ESPC, so they do have guaranteed savings, but that they need to reach. That's part of this contract.
Yes.
Let's see, I'm gonna go to Scott and then I'm gonna go to Commissioner Jordan.
Yeah, just adding some additional color to what Randy and Gail have presented here. So if the commissioners recall, 36 million, I'm rounding, about 12 of that is related to our switch gear, our electrical panels, kind of our core infrastructure that we know is aging, has aged beyond useful life. About 24 million is really related to the boiler system overhaul to convert over to the hydronic heat. It's related to our heating and cooling aspects of the project. So it's kind of how we've looked at 2 buckets of them.
Commissioner Jordan.
On the 550,000 of project savings, is that just the energy alone savings that's kind of backed by the audit?
No, it also includes decreases in maintenance that we will have because we're going from old equipment that we're paying maintenance for today to new equipment, so the maintenance will go down. Rebates that we'll get from the utilities. Did we have any savings in our employees? I don't remember if that was in that number.
No, that was
That's
just
extra.
that portion of it, which was an estimate, but we potentially have depending on the time frame of when we get the equipment in and it starts operating, that savings there also can be added to that projection.
Yeah, so we did not include any labor savings. For example, under the current high pressure steam, we have to have a class one license person 24/7. If we do go to hot water, we do not need that person there 24/7, and they do not have to have that high of a class to work on the equipment. So it will help us actually fill those positions and not have to have them here 24/7.
Yeah, and then in the near future, I think the idea is to really build more of an on-call type system, although that would take additional re-engineering of some of the fire systems. Because not only do they stand as the boiler technician that has to be there 24/7, but as of right now, we also respond to fire. But we potentially will eventually shed that off to an on-call system. And as these positions get replaced, we'll be looking for basically more HVAC electrical type trades to replace them. It also gives that technician the ability to respond to off-site facilities, which we presently don't have after hours and on weekends. If we have any calls for heating or cooling systems at the training center or scrapped, the golf courses, any of those, this technician will now have the ability to respond.
And are there, just to follow up if I could, are there any other borrowing options besides the REIT one idea?
The debt portion, I mean, you could make debt payments out of current operations. This is an allowable project if you want, that you could take the debt payment out of REIT one, but you don't have to do that. You could pay it out of just your normal operations. This is GO debt. And we have plenty of capacity for this project.
I think just a little bit further on that, yes, there are other options, would be dependent upon finding a funding source. So whether that funding source is current operations, which means we've got to find it within current operations. REIT's one that we identified because it has available capacity to utilize as a repayment of the debt.
Otherwise, it's just coming out of general fund, which we don't have enough to do operations, let alone capital. So. Okay, so I guess I'm confused on the average project savings and, because is that, it sounds like it's a combination of hard and soft dollars in there.
Yes, so there's in the energy savings itself that they're guaranteeing, which we believe it's low only because that's why they're guaranteeing to that number. They're not gonna guarantee the high end. And then it would also be, if we did this project, we would not have to budget as much in future years for maintenance, so to say.
I guess I just seeing it come off the annual debt service, the debt service, if we do this, I mean, is gonna be there no matter what.
So it's basically saying that we're gonna continue putting into the general fund budget what we currently have. But we expect our costs to be lower by an average of 550,000. So we would basically be using 550,000 of current operations to fund it. And we would get that money by Gil not reducing his request because we have less costs of leaving it flat. So you could say we don't want it, we want those savings to just be part of the general fund.
I mean,
And
which
we
is what
want
we're
to
asking
use
all
all
the-
of it.
That's what we're asking all the other departments to
Sure.
do. We haven't done this with any other department. So I guess that's where I'm just,
So I mean, you could take that 550 to zero. You definitely could do that. And just say any savings, we will just reduce future budgets by that amount.
right, because if we do that as a debt payment, it's coming
Yeah.
out of REIT, and so we're gonna be
Yep.
set at that amount in REIT.
Yes.
Um,
So
and
for
so there could just
example,
be
you-
additional money to the general fund
yes,
for operations
Yes.
for.
again, that
any part of
is
it.
an option that you can set in future years. Where you say, I want this to all come out of REIT, I only want a certain portion.
I just.
Yep,
I will,
that is
I mean,
options.
we've just seen where we thought different things we were doing would provide more savings than they do. So I just don't want to be counting on that at this point. Commissioner French.
So wouldn't a similar analogy be if we were driving a 30-year-old car with regular maintenance and tune-ups and everything like that versus buying a new car where everything's covered by the warranty and you don't have that ongoing maintenance? But you've got the warranty that's covering all of those expenses moving forward, so you can drop them. You're not paying that on an annual basis anymore?
Correct.
Okay.
It'd be like, if I had my 20-year-old Toyota, I know I'm gonna spend so much on maintenance. If I get a new car, I now have that maintenance either in my budget or I can use it to help pay my car payment.
You're still kind of paying the same amount.
I'm still paying this, yeah.
Because you gotta make a payment now.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to your point, so help me understand how the costs get right now, the costs of our current system, how do they get distributed across the operations of different
It
departments?
is current, so our current,
Just so, because I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to understand how it
our
gets.
current costs are in your general fund budget.
Oh, they're not allocated by department.
They will get allocated out in cost allocation, but we spend in our current budget monies for electricity, maintenance and repairs, staffing of the 24/7 operations. What we're saying is those costs will go down
Right.
about $550,000 a year. And you can do one of two things for it. You can just say, hey, we're not gonna budget for that. We could use other sources to pay for the debt payment, one of which is REIT one.
Right.
You could use fund balance, you could use some ARP dollars that you have left over. Of course, we will, other entities will get charged a portion of this as well. It's just options. So what we're looking for today is really, we've spent, I know Jim and outside counsel have probably spent a good 2 months since we last presented, working on this contract, getting it to that point. What we are looking for is, if we're going to go forward, we would like to approve the contract next week on the consent agenda. Again, if you want to figure out the financing options right now, you can. If you want to set them in stone, if you want to have some time, you can take that time. But the total project is going to be about $35.8 million, and it's roughly $12 million a year of payments. So whether or not you want to say this is exactly how we're going to fund it right now, that's up to you. What we're asking is, if you want us to go forward, we would like to sign the contract so that they can start ordering the equipment with use cash flow for the current portion, which i.e. is fund balance, and then we will sign. We'll get bond counsel to give us documents that we can reimburse ourselves for anything that we spend ahead of time, if you so choose.
Looking for a head nod?
Yes, to put it on the agenda, I guess,
Scott. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I got a question.
Kind of back to Commissioner Waldrop's question. So for our facility costs, all of our gas, electric, maintenance, those departments that are general fund related, they get allocated dollars in there. For those departments that are not general fund allocated, they also get them. So it's all the portion. Yeah.
Okay.
So general fund doesn't bear the entire cost
Right,
of
that
our
I was
expenses. Yeah, I think I just want to add some more clarity, because I think that was more a good question. So really, knowing that the $36 million is a large commitment for the commissioners to make, we wanted to at least have a conversation on options to pay for it over the 3 years. Don't necessarily have to have solid, this is exactly what it's going to be. As Randy mentioned, the way this model has been built is you could lower the amount in the, we'll call it the ARP category, but soon to be general fund, with the action that Jeff's going to brief you on in a little bit here. That's available. General fund dollars in unassigned reserves are available, and there is some REIT capacity available. So we wanted to give you some comfort that there are available resources to pay for it. It's just a matter of, this is an example of how we might set it up. You could reduce the amount of ARP that's soon to be general fund. You could increase the amount of reserves. You could use more REIT commitments to in the future. But giving you a picture of, we do have a variety of funding sources that can meet it, and it's about $12 million a year each of the next 3 years. So we don't have to come up with it all in 1 year. It's not a $36 million check that we're writing to them. If the direction of the board is you're feeling comfortable with the available resource, the available dollars to fund this, then we could go forward with having this on the consent agenda next week for an action by the board to sign the agreement. If you want more time to discuss, we would not do that yet.
And just to remember from the last presentation, after implementation plus 20 years, the total cost of our current system was about this $36 million. And the total cost of the new hydronic system after the savings was about $22 million net over that 23-year period.
So do you see any potential for price reduction if we wait?
Not that I can see. I think the price of this stuff is gonna continue to go up. We've already seen it with some of the HVAC equipment that we've been purchasing and even the hydronic systems from the original that we did at the medical examiner to the small arms range. They all seem to be going up, seems to be about that, right about 8 to 10% per year.
Right.
As in, even as technologies get better. This system too, we did engineer it in a way that in the future, even the modules that we have there, as they go, if the infrastructure for electrical were to expand throughout Spokane County, we could eventually change them over to electrical if the savings were there to be had. It is laid out in that manner for an easy changeover. I think the idea right now is for, you know, any expanding services or any of that we have, we would be able to accommodate that by just adding another module. So this really, between that and us controlling the hot water side of it from our facility, gives us more reach really from our centralized plant that we have from buildings that were somewhat pulled away from it, but they somewhat have energy usage from it. It really does centralize us a lot better.
I guess my comment is gonna be that I think we need to do it. I think we just gotta figure out how we're paying for it. So I don't know, do we have time on Monday's agenda that we can come back and look at? I mean, I would put it on next Tuesday's agenda, you know, for legislative. And then we have to have that discussion on Monday as to how we're really gonna pay for it, because I think, you know, what we need to look at is, so then that uses up all the rest of our ARP dollars.
That would, so if, for example, if you said we don't want to use all those ARP dollars for that, and we can definitely walk through that Monday, we can say, we're gonna commit this many of those dollars, and then we can work down. And then the debt is the final number.
Right.
And if you would like, I can send that spreadsheet out to each of you in advance if you want to play with that number.
I think that'd be good, but I mean, I think that's what I just want, I think we all need to realize that
Yes.
you know, is where we're at on ARP dollars. And so what you have here is anticipating that. And we don't know about the city, so there's 3.5 million we're not sure of.
So the annual payment here at the top right assumes the city's payment.
Yes, that's assuming that annual payment is based upon 11.5 million of debt. That recalculates. So basically I got the formula from Ryan with our municipal advisor. So this is based on a 20-year amortization based on an average rate that he expected, that he sent me. He did send it to me a couple months ago. Rates have gone up. They've starting to come back down. Again, it depends on when you go to the markets.
And we also know we have a lot of capital expenditures that we didn't fund in the current budget that are, you know, so it's like really looking at like, what is that outflow looks like in the future, because this is one asset, but we have other assets that we have to pay attention to, which then doesn't allow for
And
recapacity.
we have remodels that we need to do
So,
on the new building. So
yeah, so, I mean, I just think there's more that I need to get thought through on the funding side. I mean, I think we have to do it as this, I guess, you know, the electrical we have to do. I mean, I know we can't delay, and I don't really want to delay on the boiler because, to Commissioner French's point, I mean, it's just going to get more expensive as we go forward. But we're kind of doing a lot of that to meet the energy standards of the state as well, which
a byproduct of this is that it does meet that, but this is something that Gil's been noodling about and thinking about presenting far prior to any energy standards. The high pressure steam it's hard to find people because we have to have someone there 24/7.
Yeah.
And they can't be gone more than 15 minutes, I believe it is. So that person is of no other value to us other than sitting in that room, making sure the high pressure steam is working 24/7, 7 days a week.
I think we just, as we look at what this cost is, we know we need to do it, but what are we giving up? I
Yeah,
think
'cause
that's
we-
The conversation I want to make sure we've had.
Yeah, we really, when we took the study of the EUIs, there were other energy hitters that we could have really targeted on this. They still would have needed to be funded, but we really wanted to still make those energy savings numbers, but by replacing equipment that's 30, 40, 50 years old. Basically it's the longevity in the operation. And it's really the uninterrupted operation of county business was really the major goals that we were trying to look at on top of the energy savings.
So with the contract being over 3 years, is it taking that long to
We have to, so we, like-
transition it?
yeah, like we went through the switch gears are all long lead time. So we need to go, that's what's really gonna hit first. And then 2, once we start the actual layout, we'll actually have to utilize those shoulder months. So that between, winter and spring and between fall and winter, those are gonna be the months that we really have to target the air handling systems. As far as the heating coil side of it, all summer long, we could be replacing coils in some of the air handler units. Laying out our secondary plumbing grid, we'll start putting that all together. And then we'll actually, as part of this, we'll be adding the public works building. On that side of it, everything will go out to the hydronic system, even their hot water. So where we sit right now is we have a, unique opportunity at this price to get all that in along with replacing those 3 switch gears.
Commissioner Jordan and then Scott.
I was just gonna say, I agree with Commissioner CUNY. I think, Gil's analysis has shown that this is the fiscally responsible thing to do, even though it hurts in the short term. Eventually it will pay off, and that old car is just gonna get more expensive over time. I just think we need to keep the conversation going on the financing. It's helpful to have this overview today just to get us all thinking about what the options are. But I agree, we just need to continue to work through the trade-offs, and I don't see a reason, if there's no benefit to delay, which it sounds like there's not, with things getting more expensive, then I don't see why it couldn't just move forward and then we continue to talk about the cost.
So, are we in agreement though that we're gonna go with Johnson Controls? Like we're there. It's just how do we want to make this balance sheet work on, but we are at least going to contract with that company. Okay.
I think that's why you said, plan for
Yeah.
it to be on the agenda for next Tuesday. Monday, let's talk a little bit more on how we're gonna really finance it.
Make the numbers work.
So next Monday, we'll talk about the financing and all capital projects and then the contract on the agenda for Tuesday.
Yeah, because I think we gotta look at what all those capital projects are to know where we're at. Like I said, what we know we're giving up instead of, so we're looking at holistically instead of just at this one project.
So next Monday, right now, the commissioners have your boards and commission assignments discussion. You have your 2025 meeting agenda to set. There's also we'll have a federal lobbyist on, so we're anticipating that could be about an hour and a half. There's a number of items that had to be delayed off of today's agenda because it was so packed that some of those items the teams are looking for action next Tuesday. You also have your 10 o'clock meeting with the state legislators on Tuesday. So this one will add to Monday, and I'm anticipating there could be a couple of other briefings that get added on Monday that are specific to action on Tuesday.
I mean, we could delay this, but I don't want to delay it too long because we gotta figure out, how we're really funding it.
Yeah, no, I think we've got time. I just was highlighting some other things because there's a likely a couple of items that are on Tuesday afternoon's consent agenda that we're looking for action, but would be briefed in either the morning on Tuesday, the morning on Monday, which is not our typical process for you. So
Since we're hitting the year end and
Yep.
everyone's trying to get
trying to get
contracts
things through.
done before the end of the year, that's our last meeting before
We
break, so.
appreciate your flexibility with that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if there is time, we can review it again, but Randy, you were saying we could choose to enter into the contract. There's always
We can do it the
flexibility
first
when
part
you
of
first get
January if we
going.
want to.
And it seems like we really need to figure out sit down with the city and identify, is there gonna be, if the lease could be increased and over how many years? Cause I guess kind of doubt that you were assuming you would be increasing the lease over a certain amount of years to pay back the capital.
Yeah, and it's not,
I don't think that
it's more of an M and O.
one-time payment.
Yeah, exactly. And we, Commissioner Cutie and I met with the city yesterday, met with their mayor, and we talked about this, and we gave them some high-level estimates based on their joint use agreement and their utilization in there and how much our capital costs are gonna be. So we had indicated we're gonna send them all the presentations that our team have done, that the VOCCs have already seen, so they understand how we've come to this number. And we expressed it's $12 million per year over 3 years. And our rough estimate was about 3.5 million city related. So that would be about one third over those 3 years as well. So they understood that as well. It wasn't, we're looking for a check from them of 3.5 million on day one.
And Scott had sent a letter to the mayor a while ago.
June and October.
I saw the response back that wanted to just understand what the estimate from Johnson Controls was, what the background was, so.
Exactly. All right, so we'll put it on Monday.
We'll put it up.
You know, last week we had a conversation about the finishing out the exercise area in the basement for Public Works, and I indicated that I had a source for material for gym floors. I've got a sample of it in my office for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Gonna take us to Mr. Macio. Morning, Jen.
Good morning, Chairman. Ron, could I impose upon you to pull up the overhead presentation? Board members, this is the second occasion when I've been in front of you with regard to a request by the Kalispel Tribe of Indians to convert property from fee to trust. In this particular case, on November 1st, we received a request from the Kalispels to convert a parking lot consisting of 22.64 acres located to the north of their gaming facility. On the overhead that's in front of you, I have outlined, if you will, in blue, the property immediately north of the present parking garage, which they have requested be changed from fee to trust. As the board is aware, when the property is converted from fee to trust, it has three elements that are critical to Spokane County. Number one, the property is no longer subject to paying real property taxes. Number two, it is no longer subject to local zoning regulations. And number three, the property becomes the jurisdiction, if you will, of the Kalispel tribe. Once the Kalispel tribe submits an application to change property from fee to trust, they provide notice to the appropriate governmental entities. And in this case, they provided notice to Spokane County and to Airway Heights. Once we receive notification of the application, we have 30 days to provide certain input to the Kalispel tribe, or excuse me, to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and also comment on their application. This is very similar to what we did when they came in front of us to convert from fee to trust the Raceway Park, which they purchased from us. In this particular case, board members, Ron, if I could have you please now go to the third slide, please. I wanted to share with the board that in this particular case, the next slide, if you wouldn't mind, Ron. In this particular case, the Board of County Commissioners is only receiving about $740 in real property taxes from this particular piece of property. And the total property taxes for 2024, in the next slide, Ron, were at $6,700. So in this particular case, you'll see that we aren't receiving very much in property tax. The other important issue to remember with regard to this piece of property is it's not located in the unincorporated areas of Spokane County. It's located in the city of Airway Heights. Accordingly, their development regulations will govern what is developed on this particular property. Although the city of Airway Heights development regulations wouldn't be applicable, as I shared with the board previously, the Kalispel Tribe of Indians have adopted their own development regulations, and the development regulations which they've adopted are very consistent with our JLUS regulations. So any future development that they have on this particular piece of property, they will ensure that it will not adversely affect the Fairchild Air Force Base, if you will. And in fact, they get input from the Fairchild Air Force Base in conjunction with the development. Ron, if I could have you go just to the final slide and one further, if you wouldn't mind, Ron. What I've done in this particular case, board members, is I've prepared a response for your consideration to the application by the Kalispels to convert this 22.64 acres from fee to trust. The response addresses the issues which they want us to respond to. And unlike previous letters which I prepared for you, where we've asked the BIA to condition the approval, in this case, I have not asked them to condition the approval because, as we've learned, they refuse to condition the approval of an application free to trust by any conditions that we may impose. Instead, what I've indicated in the letter, we normally put this in these letters, but we're not doing it in this case because we have such a good working relationship with the Kalispel tribe that it's our hope that they will work with us on any future development of this property to ensure that it is consistent with JLUS and that it does not adversely affect our providing regional services in the community. So my request today to the Board of County Commissioners is I would like to place on the board's next Tuesday consent agenda execution of the draft letter that I prepared for your response, which is part of your packet today. Unless the board has some questions, I don't have any further comments on this. I think the board is very familiar with this approach, and we're very familiar with what the BIA does when they receive approaches like this.
I think we are. Is there any questions? Not seen any. Oh, no.
No, I agree with everything you said. Move forward. Yeah.
Okay.
You're shaking your head yes
Yeah.
instead of no question.
Yeah.
Just checking. Very
Thank you
good.
very much, Madam Chair. Then
Thank you.
it'll be on the agenda next Tuesday for your execution.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then I think that's gonna take us to Doug. I don't see Erin. Is she? No, she's
Got
on
mine.
Zoom. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, Erin.
Sorry I'm not there in person. I am battling through a cold right now, so
No, that doesn't sound good. Well,
I didn't think you wanted to share in that, so
we appreciate you not sharing. Thank you.
awesome. Well, myself and Maddie Powell and Doug Chase are here today to present to you a briefing on our Fairgrounds Campground restroom replacement project and our upcoming contract award to Walker Construction. Before we dive into that, I'll have Ron move to the next slide, please. I'm gonna give you an overview of our master plan recap. Next slide, please. As we outlined in our 2024 capital improvement plan, the Fair and Expo had planned to complete a master plan study for the campground area, which is on the far eastern side of our grounds. We worked with MTLA to complete the master plan in July. And through that process, we have outlined multiple phases and our priorities for this project. Next slide, please. So currently, for phase one, our first priority is to replace the existing restroom facility. We will be demoing an existing restroom that's about 280 square feet, and we're planning to build a new restroom, which is about 1,200 square feet. This new facility will also feature 2 concrete parking stalls and a concrete sidewalk around the building. But we do find budget, we would like to have a couple alternate items included, but they may be down the road, including aesthetically an exterior and gable truss for the design and some landscaping. Next slide, please. So our second item in phase one would be adding a controlled access gate. If you look at the top of the graphic, this is what we refer to as our red gate currently when you enter our grounds off of Broadway near our equestrian facility. Currently, this is a manual gate with a good old padlock with a combination code and key. By upgrading this gate, it would be electronic. We would be able to have more controls in place, and we would be able to provide codes to our campground users, our dump site users, and our events accessing our grounds through this area. We would be able to control, how many days or hours they would be able to have access for. It would be a huge improvement for us. The third item in phase one would be adding campground signage. Right now, there's really not a good layout indicating what space you're going to and the flow of traffic. Next slide, please. Priority number 4 in phase one, if you look at the south end on the right side, priority number 4 there, that is a grease interceptor station. With over 40 food vendors at the fair, we do generate a lot of grease, and it does have to be properly disposed of. So we do need to make some improvements to upgrade this area. And then if you look to the top, you'll see priority number 5. That is making improvements to our RV dump site, which we're a really popular place as there's not any dump stations centrally located within the area. We charge $15 and you can come in and dump your RV. We want to improve this amenity, adding new concrete, drainage, some additional water sources, and just make it more user friendly. Next slide, please. As you see at the bottom of our graphic, priority number 6 is our bunkhouse area that we'll be converting and improving and adding additional RV spots. This is where our Carnival company currently camps during the duration of the fair in bunkhouses with their nearly 200 workers. And they are currently spending about $25,000 each fair to bring in gray water holding tanks and additional restroom facilities, and then paying for those to be pumped daily. So our goal would be to have water hookups and direct connectivity to the sewer in this area, and then also create some additional camping spaces in this area that we could use throughout the year. And if you look at priority number 7, we're looking to add a camp host space and then also create 9 more designated camping spaces. Right now we do camp in this area, but there's no amenities, no water, no sewer, no electrical. So if we could at least get the electrical and the water into these areas, it'd be very beneficial. Our staff is currently setting up temporary amenities for the fair and for our junior livestock show. Next slide, please. In phase 2, we would then do an overhaul to our existing campground area. what we are finding, with the size of camping units changing, they're getting larger. We are not set up, we usually try to set up where we can double the units in each space, but it's getting pretty tight with all the tip outs and how large the units are getting that people are bringing in to stay in. So we will enhance and improve those spaces, adding new pedestals for the power connection and water, gravel pads, picnic tables, and then we'd also like to include an additional restroom facility. By adding improved restroom facilities, we're going to be able to offer our guests showering areas back in the campground. Currently, if you're staying with us and you want to use a shower facility, you would have to navigate into our grounds and use a shower either at the indoor arena or multi-purpose B. And it's often not very convenient, especially if we have other events going on. Next slide, please. So this is where I will turn this over to Maddie, which she has been serving as our project manager on our restroom replacement.
As Erin mentioned, this is the current project that we are working on, replacing the restroom as phase 1, and that's what we're asking for authorization to award today. Next slide, please. So the top picture there is the existing restroom, and I can assure you it's just as scary in person. The bottom photo is the rendering of the architect did of what we are planning to build. Next slide, please. So we will be adding, this new restroom is a bit bigger. It'll have a men's and women's restroom, 2 single stall ADA restrooms, 2 ADA certified showers, and then 2 single occupancy showers. The men's and women's restroom will also have ADA stalls within them so that there's maximum flexibility for the fairgrounds to close for servicing as needed. The project is started design in the beginning of October and went out to bid November 13th and closed right before Thanksgiving. Today we are presenting and are asking for a resolution next week, and then we're hoping to start construction at the beginning of January with substantial completion in mid-April and final completion at the beginning of May. Next slide, please. We received a total of 7 bids, all were responsive. The lowest bid was from Walker Construction for $938,718, including tax. This is for base bid only, which is what we are looking to accept. Next slide, please. The project total budget is $1,102,415. This is a combination of the USDA grant, REIT money, and the Fair and Expo funds. The design and permitting is about $131,000. The rest will be for construction. We have about $30,000 contingency with more as needed that the fairgrounds can pull from their fund balance. If we don't need that contingency, Walker has said that they will hold their alternate prices into construction, so we could add those at a later date. Next slide, please. So today we're asking that we are able to award Walker Construction for base bid only. And that is it, unless you have any questions.
Any questions?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I appreciate Erin giving us, giving me a tour with Commissioner Jordan this summer during the fair. And we got to see the old restroom, and I am, really looking forward to seeing the new one.
Breathe in a lot
So
of
it's definitely served its time.
Yes.
Time for an update.
Yes. So anyway, just congratulations on all your work to keep implementing this plan. We're just gonna keep making the fairgrounds better. So exciting.
Okay, so this is the shower and restrooms, right? This is not the campgrounds themselves.
It is just phase 1 of phase 1 restroom building only, period.
So I'm looking at the project funding. And I see, I'm looking back at our capital plan, 6-year that the commissioners approved during the budget process. And I think we're a little bit out of sync here. So I see the 250 in USDA grant. I see where we had anticipated using about 150,000 from our That was from the,
It's from the
PFD credit enhancement facility, about 150,000, but I only see 300,000 for REAP. And I also see the Fair and Expo funds is that. So we're out of sync on the REAP by about 250,000. The Fair and Expo funds is that fund balance? Is that the credit enhancement?
Yes, we did have to come up with some extra funds out of our fund balance. Actually, we reviewed some items that we had on our small works roster and some equipment purchases for 2025 that we're able to push out. And I should say, you know, kind of live without right now. They were more on a wish list, not an immediate need. We do need a water truck in the future, but we can put that on hold so we can make this project happen.
Okay, so fund balance is the 302, so the REAP 1, we only have 300,000 in the budget in the 6 year for this year.
I think I looked at the adopted budget and I thought it listed 550, but guess not.
Let me make sure I'm looking at the right
Yeah,
version of it.
I have read the wrong version. That's very, very possible.
Every one has 300,000, 250 per grant.
150 for special
We only
revenue.
had 700,000 for the shower restroom.
Yeah, that's what I'm showing too.
So that's why I don't know if you're including other projects in here.
I may have combined the grant with the REIT,
Okay,
but I know we're leaning on fund balance heavily.
so right now we only have, we have 300 for REAP, 150 for special revenue, and 250 for grants. That's 700,000. And then you need $402,000 and 402,000 for meeting funding, but we only have 302 up there for Fair and Expo funds, so we're still about 100 short on a budget for it.
I think we're looking at fund balance. All the difference.
Okay, so then just for the commissioner's awareness, we just need to revise this. The 550 where it says REAP 1 is 300.
Okay.
There's 150 from credit enhancement that would be used. That the credit enhancement was a total of 1.273. A large portion of that is identified for use of the campgrounds. So this number that you're approving today, what will come forward for approval is really going to be using 300 out of REAP, 150 out of credit enhancement, 250 for the USDA, and then 402 for the Fair and Expo fund balance.
Isn't the. Sorry, with REAP 1, he said 300 plus the 150, that's 450. So we're only off by 50. Oh, by 100. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yep. So the REAP 1 should really be 300. There should be a credit enhancement facility of the 100,000, 150,000 up there.
So of the, I mean, I guess that's where on the credit enhancement, how did we use all the rest of those dollars?
The vast majority has been identified to use on the campground improvements, which has not, that's going to be a 2025 project.
Future phases that Aaron mentioned.
Yep.
And I don't wanna just, I mean, if Erin's delaying stuff out of her fund balance to make this work, I don't know. I could really just for the 1 year to take the extra 100,000 out of REAP.
Campground water sewer project for this year. That 50,000 is grant and 50,000 is credit enhancement. Is that the other 100,000?
Oh, maybe that's where that.
Yeah, I don't, Aaron, do you recall where Bill may have combined a couple of those other sources with the REIT to get to that 550?
I'll have to speak with him on that.
Okay, because that somewhat adds up as well. I just.
There's no other REIT for that. That was 50,000 grant and 50,000 credit enhancement.
Yeah.
But it was $100,000 project in your last year's budget that carried forward.
Yeah, and part of that master planning absolutely looked at sewer infrastructure needs as Aaron relayed in upgrades within that campground in future phases. So that could have been rolled into this.
Yeah, I
was thinking it should only be
I
three.
know we looked carefully at what we, the different pots we had to work with in taking the approach.
So is this supposed to be on for tomorrow? Or, I mean, today or next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday.
So there's some
during
time to just
legislative
figure it
week,
out,
we
right?
can certainly sort it out and update the slide. Update the slide to make sure we have it more accurate. Got a chance to do that. Sorry about that.
Good presentation. We'll get there. We got over a week to figure it out. We'll get it.
There you
Well,
go.
and I think we just saw that the bids came in higher than anticipated too.
They were a little bit higher, yes.
Why they're in fund balance, they were hoping it
Yep.
wasn't that high, so. So it's again, it's one of those things where the construction costs are coming in higher, when you have 7 bidders and this is the low bid, I mean, it's a good bid.
Yeah.
So it's not
Good
gonna
that you got that many.
be any.
We had a
cheaper.
really good response.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, I mean, I just hate to have, I don't know what the fund balance is for the fair right now. But I just, they need those funds to be able to purchase stuff and all of it, you know, you gotta have all that cash sitting there too, so I know. Happy to have it be on the agenda to award to Walker. And then, yeah, we just figure it out.
Well, look. No
I
comment.
think, and I think next week as well, Aaron will be presenting proposed rates for next year, which are also contemplated to continue to plan and prepare for capital investments needed at the Fair and Expo. So I think that would be helpful to go through and see that recommendation as well.
Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, thank you, Erin, appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll get you some revised numbers.
Okay,
Great.
and I think we're sticking with that, you're still on.
Yes, and we are going to transition very quickly to Rachel Hansen is here. She's been working on replacing our 30, 40 plus year old concessions trailer. And with that, I won't take any more of her lightning here. She has a very presentation put together for you.
Yes, thank you, Doug, and thank you all for your time. So today, yeah, we're gonna discuss the Parks Recreation and Golf 6-year capital improvement plan project, the Northside Concessions trailer. It is a food concessions trailer at the aquatics facility. This initiative involves replacing it, and today we're gonna request your support in awarding the bid for the project to Quality Trailer Incorporated, identified as the lowest responsible bidder for a bid amount of $72,293.27. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the right one. This concessions trailer replacement is part of the 6-year capital improvement plan, categorized under equipment and major maintenance with a budget of $100,000, funded with REIT 2. The project team includes Kurt Chambers, Park Operations Manager, and myself. Next slide, please. To provide some background on this project, Spokane County Parks Recreation and Golf Department owns that concessions trailer at the Northside facility and professionally contracts a concessionaire to operate concessions during the aquatic season. This concessions trailer is open to the public visiting the Northside Aquatics facility during open swim hours and select public swim events on site each summer. This facility is open 7 days a week, weather dependent, from mid-June through mid-August. The location sells prepackaged items such as chips, candy, as well as bottled water, so frozen lemonades, hot dogs, chips, nacho cheese. To help encourage our sales, patrons are advised, with a few exceptions, that outside food and beverages are not permitted to be brought in the facility. By some of these photos, you can see that the concessions trailer is outdated and has reached its exceeded its anticipated service life. More specifically, it has limited electrical capabilities that render the trailer unable to accommodate today's standard concessions equipment. Small internal leaks must be regularly maintained, along with a poor layout, small for 2 employees. A missing awning, no insulation, and no air conditioning create uncomfortable working conditions each summer. Replacement in time for the 2025 season would be key to ensuring optimal performance and compliance with updated standards, and enhancing both safety and overall customer experience. Next slide, please. The project scope for P 14361 includes a maximum of a 21-foot non-motorized concessions trailer, which includes the tongue and hitch, food equipment, and the bidder's ability to meet all federal, state, and local regulation standards to ensure the unit will pass code. This includes Washington State Labor and Industries along with Spokane Regional Health District. It is also important that this unit includes a good electrical system, floor plan layout, and air conditioning. Next slide, please. As mentioned in the previous slide, the Department of Labor and Industries, along with Spokane Regional Health District, will play a critical role in ensuring the safety and compliance with state standards. We have been informed that Labor and Industries may take several weeks to months to approve plan layouts. Additionally, it is common for the trailer manufacturers to require several months to construct these specialized units. Considering these timelines, we estimate that the entire process will take several months, while our goal and drive is to have the trailer ready for the start of the 2025 aquatic season in mid-June. We cannot guarantee its availability by then due to the lengthy regulatory approval process. If the process takes longer than we hoped, we will be able to utilize the current concessions trailer to maintain operations and uninterrupted food service until the new trailer is available in this coming season. Next slide, please. Here is an overview of the project schedule. We went out to bid twice. During the first round of bids, proposals were either disqualified or exceeded our budget. However, the second invitation to bid resulted in viable options. We aim to secure a resolution by December 17th, 2024 to move forward with awarding the bid. Following that, we will proceed with collecting plans, coordinating with the state and local agencies, and initiating the manufacturing process. Next slide, please. Altogether, we received 5 bids. The finalist one was the lowest responsible bidder, Quality Trailers Incorporated, and they are located in Portland, Oregon. Next slide, please. Finally, our request to award project P 14361 to the lowest qualified bidder today for the agenda next Tuesday. We'd like to award Quality Trailers Incorporated for a total of $72,293.27, which includes tax and freight. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions?
Once this is complete and we have the new trailer, are we gonna sell the old one?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at it, I mean, yeah, it may not suit our needs, but someone will buy that.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I don't think we identified any other use. We would go through the disposal process,
Right.
purchasing and all of that.
Okay, I mean, this might be a prime one to put on that GovDeals website that Deborah comes in and talks about. I mean, so somebody, I'm sure, will have a use for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Very good. Any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Martin Hall, I think their concessions at.
Yes, they have a building there. They have a structure, a brick building that sells snacks and stuff. Yeah.
I think Martin Hall is next up. Soccer Association. Jim and Scott have the historical background on this, but we just recently received the 2024 budget and a resolution to include it. Two of the issues are, we received this on December 4th or December 6th, and we're supposed to receive it in the middle of August, and they included capital expenses in the budget. So there are 2 questions for the board on how they would like to address that.
We're fortunate that all the board members, I think except for maybe Amber, have been on the Martin Hall board from time to time, so they're.
Don't give anyone any ideas.
Okay. And I want to say something at the outset. Commissioner French in 2014 was successful in getting the Martin Hall board to eliminate for 1 year the county's participation in the Martin Hall budget. And he did that because Commissioner French for these many years has been trying to encourage the 9 counties who are part of Martin Hall Consortium to mothball Martin Hall and use the county's detention facilities, which the day bed cost is much less than we're paying at Martin Hall. I believe the Martin Hall amount, Scott, under the new is $250 a day. So just a couple of highlights, and Commissioner Jordan, I think most of these I've shared with you. In 1996, the Board of County Commissioners and 9 other counties signed an agreement under the Interlocal Cooperation Act to form the Martin Hall Consortium. And the unique thing about Martin Hall is most juvenile detention facilities are operated by the courts. But when the legislature approved the Martin Hall, they provided that it could be operated not by the courts, but by a private entity. And so the Martin Hall Consortium Board operates Martin Hall through a consultant, not through the Superior Court. That's kind of interesting. In 1996, when the agreement was originally drafted, it was for 100 years. And of course, the county commissioner said, geez, Mr. Maceo, you can't have an agreement for 100 years. Well, Martin Hall Board ultimately modified it to a 50-year time frame. And the 50-year time frame for the Martin Hall Consortium agreement is consistent with the lease agreement that we have from the state for the Martin Hall facility itself. In 1996, when we signed the Martin Hall ILA, it provided that the 9 county members would pay a proportionate share of the maintenance and operation budget consistent with the number of beds out of the 27 which they agreed to pay for. So in this particular case, Spokane County, if you will, is responsible for 5 out of the 27 beds at Martin Hall. And that accounts to some 18.51% of the operation and maintenance budget. The 1996 agreement, in addition to discussing the number of beds that were available, and that the county would share 18.51% of those beds, it also clothed Martin Hall Board with certain responsibilities. Under the agreement, by August of every year, they had to come up with a budget, an O&M budget. And the reason that's critical is because some counties adopt their budgets in October, and other counties like Spokane County adopt their budgets in December. So the Martin Hall Board was required to come up with a budget in the second Monday of August and then distribute it to the member counties for them to include in their particular budget. In this particular case, for the 2025 budget, the clerk of the Board of County Commissioners received a letter from the Martin Hall Board on December 4th, and the December 4th letter included a resolution and the budget which had been approved by the Martin Hall Board for calendar year 2025. And in that budget, it identified that the Board of County Commissioners of Spokane County would be paying some 18.51% of the budget, which equated to, and I'm going to look at more Matt to indicate that amount. I don't have it in front of me.
Our total share,
Yes.
456,250. If you add in the capital expenses, then it's that.
It is that. It is that.
Oh, that is the number.
It is
That is
including without capital, it would be
the 434.
So over these many years, one of the issues the Board of County Commissioners always discussed is, does the Martin Hall budget, does it have the ability to include capital improvements? Because if you ask any accountant, and I'm looking at Randy, Capital improvements, normally speaking, are not included in the general terminology of operation and maintenance. They are identified separately.
That's correct.
So from time to time, the Board of County Commissioners have taken the position that they're not going to pay, if you will, the capital improvement costs in the Martin Hall budget. They're only going to pay the remaining portion of the budget. So on certain occasions, they have actually voted to not approve the Martin Hall budget. But I can tell you from a legal perspective, although they voted against it, I'm not aware of any year which they did not pay their proportionate share of the entire O&M budget to include the capital cost element that's included in the budget. So why we're here today is the Board of County Commissioners is required under the 1996 agreement to approve the Martin Hall budget on an annual basis. So you receive the budget and staff intends to place it on your December 17th legislative consent agenda for you to consider. And so we're here today to find out if you would like us to recalculate potentially the budget which we have received, eliminating capital improvements, or just leave it in the budget as we've received it from the Martin Hall Board. I'm looking at Randy. I don't think there's anything else in that regard. Does the board have any questions?
Did Grant County used to be part of this? I never put them on the list. No.
I believe they are. I've got that right in front of me. I'm just looking at it right now. And I'm mistaken. Grant County is not a part of the Martin Hall Consortium. Douglas, Stevens, Pend Oreille, Spokane, Adams, Asotin, Lincoln, Whitman, and Ferry County are the 9 county members.
Okay. Mr. French.
So I think the agreement says that we have to consider the budget, but I don't think it has a requirement that we have to approve it. And stuff, because it seems to me we have not approved the budget and they said, so fine. And went ahead and charged us anyway.
You know, Commissioner French, the language in this agreement was in 1996, has really unique language, and that's why.
Yeah.
May I just read a portion of this, Madam Chair, to the board? It provides, and Commissioner Jordan, I'm sure you're aware of this. The joint board shall submit the operating budget to each member Board of County Commissioners in sufficient time for the Board of County Commissioners to adopt the members' annual budget under Chapter 36.40. That's our budget law. Then Commissioner French, here's the unique language. The Board of County Commissioners of each member county must approve the operating budget in writing. The approval will constitute a general obligation of each member to appropriate the operating fund, the amount specified in the operating budget as the members' annual dues. So it's kind of unique language, Commissioner French, the way it is set up. So the reason we're here today is tentatively, we placed this on your December 17th legislative consent agenda for your consideration. And if you have no further questions, we'll leave it like it is. If you'd like us to recalculate anything, the budget office and legal can recalculate our proportion share, eliminating the capital amount if that's what your direction is.
Have we ever been successful in arguing the budget submitted by Martin Hall?
Only when you got in the 1 year, Commissioner French, to eliminate the entire budget. But in answer to your question, Commissioner French, I'm not aware of any situation over these last years when we've ever been successful in arguing that we don't have an obligation to pay the capital improvement costs allocated in the budget.
So we need two more commissioners on the what do they call it? Consortium.
Oh, consortium board, correct.
To pass away or get out of office so that we can come back and readdress the issue with remaining commissioners, because it requires unanimous consent to get out of this. And two commissioners that are still on it refuse to give consent.
At prior board's direction, I prepared agreements that would mothball Martin Hall, but provide a mechanism to get it up and running again if it's needed. I've prepared interlocal agreements with the 9 Martin Hall members that they can use our juvenile detention facility. And if it's full, we would make arrangements to use others, but unfortunately, I didn't get any traction, rephrase that, the board didn't get any traction with those approaches. I don't see the board asking any further questions, and so
Commissioner
with
Jordan,
that.
just a second, Commissioner Jordan.
Excuse me.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm really looking forward to our discussion on boards and commissions next week, because I think Commissioner French has been so successful in the past at talking Martin Hall out of charging us. I really think it's time we look at sending him back to one of his most successful tenures on a board, and really hoping to have majority support for that. So more to come.
You know, for an attorney, I thought you'd be able to do better than me. I guess not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Scott.
So as it sits right now, if this is what the board adopts, if I'm not mistaken, we had budgeted 400 and Randy helped me, 405,000, something like that. This represents about a $50,000 increase. Last year's per day bed rate was $220. Now it's $250. Without the capital, it'd be about $230. 50 grand more that we'll have to make a budget adjustment for. Thereabouts, I'm rounding.
Which I think we end up just having to pay, but I'm in agreement that we don't approve the budget.
We don't approve it.
Because we're in, that agree to it. But I think we ended up having to pay in the past though still.
What I don't know, Madam Chair, is, and Commissioner Jordan, I apologize for asking you this inquiry. I was hoping that we would have got the message from the consortium in August so that we would have known what to put in our budget. And I said, the concern here is we didn't get it until December 4th. That was our budget and it was all set up and advertised. So it makes it kind of a little bit problematic for at least Spokane County.
This was 2 days after we adopted it. We adopted on the 2nd.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I believe I was able to have it where we weren't paying for capital, but then they didn't. I think they changed how they were doing their capital to put it within their operating budget where they had it separated out. Or so, yeah.
And I'm speaking out of turn here, but my recollection is when Tori Peterson made her presentation, I was of the impression that Tori Peterson has this in her budget. And I was under the impression, I thought, that we were paying for this from the mental health tax because it's clearly a lawful not the mental health, the juvenile justice tax. It's a lawful expenditure for that particular purpose. So I remind that, Madam Chair, to the board.
Okay. Commissioner Jordan?
Can someone help me understand how it has gone in the past when the board has not approved the Martin Hall budget, but still has to pay? I'm struggling to understand the logistics of that. And if we haven't been successful in not paying, then what is the point of that exercise?
It's just ceremonial to protest pain. That's all it is.
So do they charge us and we just pay it anyway?
Yes.
Yep. They send the bill.
Okay. All right.
I think.
It's kind of like saying no to your wife. You're gonna do it anyway.
Well, that's something I can understand.
Yeah, there you go. I thought I'd put it in terms we all understood.
Break it down.
Yeah, break it down.
I don't understand that, so there you go.
My recollection, Commissioner Jordan, is one of the reasons the board didn't approve it is because they want to make it clear to the other 9 consortium or 8 consortium members that they think it's important to revisit this issue of mothballing it all the time to the extent we can. So that was one of the reasons. And in the letter that we sent to these other counties suggesting mothballing it, one of the reasons we said is because it's so costly, and there's another way to address this potentially less costly to these smaller counties that don't have the revenue streams that we have, if you will. Okay.
Well, I will just lastly say I was not clued into the August issue this year, so my apologies on that. On the 2 years I've been on, whenever I've kind of got the draft budget, I've tried to send it off to Tessa and Randy, but I understand there's still a formal notice that comes. So in the future, whoever is on the Martin Hall board can be paying closer attention to August.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt, I don't think we have anything else.
I think that's it.
I think we beat it up and
Yes.
refreshed the board's memories respectively.
I think Matt's just so excited to be part of this now.
Oh, Martin Hall Consortium. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Don't be deceived. Chris loves Martin Hall.
I was surprised when I received this bill in the mail. Now I understand.
Yes, exactly.
It's like one of those free trials we signed up for, but it's for 50 years.
Only 50 years, but that was half off from the 100-year original offer.
That's why we're all like, how long do you want that agreement to be? Let's not do any agreements that long.
Who were the commissioners at 90?
Harris, Ross Kelly, and McCaslin.
8.
Yeah.
That's for 5 beds, right?
Yeah.
That's all we get out of it, 5 beds.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
All right. Yeah, it's almost afternoon, but
Yes.
still good morning. Welcome.
I don't think we'll keep you very long. It's just a renewal for our property lockers. So this is Lieutenant Lewis Wirtz, so he's gonna be presenting, so.
Good morning. So the Smiota property lockers, this is a service renewal for a 3-year contract on those. We have 2 banks in our lobby, 96 lockers of varying sizes. By installing these, it's definitely been an efficiency thing for us. Doesn't take as long to retrieve property from the basement, which requires several staff members. The public can just get a code that's sent to them by text or email. They come in, put that code into the lockers or scan the QR code, and then the corresponding locker pops open and gives them access to the property. It's open 24/7 this way, 365 days a year. Next slide. And then that's just a picture of them, and then we'll get into the financials of it. So it is a 3-year contract, $5,760 per year for a total of $17,280. Any questions I can answer?
A lot like the Amazon lockers, they work really well for us. We just put the property in after when inmates are leaving custody, and family members can come pick it up in the next 30 days, so.
Yeah, I would concur. Ever since we went to that, that's been a big time saver.
It's the same ones that were outside the intake and release center, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Gigi Parker, remember, walked over, she was innovative to find these, they're just. And also the crisis stabilization center is using the same ones.
Okay, all right. You were great.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's how it's done.
That is how, we try. That's your guys' word last, so.
I love it. And now we'll have Jeff Morris, who will not go as quickly.
Looks like you've met Jeff. You go fast.
All contingent on the questions that are asked. Keep that in mind.
So first, a little mea culpa. Heather and I just found a typo numerical in the song today. So you guys had good practice last week. We're gonna ask you to do another amendment on the dais this afternoon. Just to change numbers that were transcribed incorrectly.
Okay, can we consider that, Matt, a Scrivener's error and not and just initial by it?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Could you help make that happen?
Yes, I'll get an answer to you before 2 o'clock.
So I don't have to
I asked
open it
it,
up for public comment since it's just.
I know the answer that we want.
I was asking Heather if we could just push it off to next week, but we do need this passed today, which gives the budget office the authorization, to start making all these journal entries.
No, and if
Which
we
will
just
make sure the
transcribe
money is
it,
actually
then I
moved
would
this year
consider
and
that a Scrivener's error.
so aside from that, these are the amendments. This is a compilation of our resolutions today. So this you guys saw in your packets. I met with some of you individually. To cut to the chase, bottom line, front page, you got a big circle number, 10,316,757.96. After all of the changes that have been discussed in recent weeks and months, and final decisions have been made, and everything has been done through resolution to date, that is what will be the total additional uncommitted general fund balance. Once the Scrivener's error is corrected and this is passed this afternoon at 2 o'clock. The bulk of the funds come from the indirects. We had reserved, with changes, it fluctuated, but towards the end, we had just shy of $6 million in indirects. Technically, we had encumbered that much. Is if somebody was awarded $5 million, they send us a bill for 1 million, we can take 100,000 at that point. We can't take the other 400,000 they bill us. The board doesn't have the authority to spend the money until the awardee has spent, and then we can take the 10%. So we had 6 million encumbered. We had earned to date 2,075,000 and change. The 1.738 number, as we move all the contracts from ARP to general fund and subtract out a couple that we weren't taking indirects on, such as the sole source to West Terrace, there was essentially $17,386,000 worth of projects there. We were going to stop taking indirects as of the end of November. So that money then gets moved into against salaries and becomes general fund balance. There's also the money that's been moved to contracts. We won't be taking indirects on those funds either. So that also gets moved against salaries, ends up in the general fund. So of your almost 6 million, roughly a third of it was earned, roughly a third of it we're not taking because of general fund contracts, roughly a third of it we're not taking because we're not going to finish the contracts. You'll see the interest earned as of last week. You guys made commitments on that. So that's another 2.3 million. And then the remainder is money that's been turned back for different reasons from our awardees. I am happy to go into any further detail if requested. The process would be, we're only dealing with the ARP side in this amendment. So the 10.3 million that is additional uncommitted balance from the general fund, the board can make a decision at their pleasure when you guys are ready to make decisions on that. But through this amendment, budget office will have budget authority to start making the journal entries. which will get that done this week, which will be a good double check on all the numbers. So if we have made any errors, you have next week that we can do without having to call a special meeting.
Okay, and then, so just so we know, so when we looked earlier today at the numbers for the boiler and stuff, that was 10.7 million, which is now down to
We had,
10.3.
when he asked a couple weeks ago, that was our estimate. We came in close, but on the wrong side. A little bit under, yeah.
Commissioner Jordan?
My only question is just, the Eide Bailly advice basically has given us our bookkeeping approach to this. Is that correct? And we feel good and have a confident plan on that.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
We have that in right.
Are there any projects out there that maybe that we funded that came up short, or maybe cost overruns that were unexpected?
Yes.
What might some of them?
I'm assuming you'd like to be.
Next question is.
I know I have spoken with my seatmates about a specific one, Newman Lake, the project that I know we were briefed on by Ben and Derek a couple months ago. We're hoping to shear off those pylons in the water. We did get permission to do that, but then the contractor came back and said, well, it doesn't impact the price at all. It's the same price regardless of whether they pull the pylons out or cut them off. So I know that project is roughly $300,000 short. And I would.
Which was the project total?
It was awarded $2 million.
2 million.
They, to be fair, they requested 2.1. They had a fairly, this is from memory, but I'm pretty sure it was 2.1. They had a bigger contingency than we thought they might need. The decision of the board was to go at 2 million versus 2.1. And here we are.
So, I would love to be able to complete that water quality project. We could get the additional 300,000. That would be great.
So thank you for all the work that you've been doing to get all these numbers lined up. So I see the red circled number that we were just talking about, 10.3 something million. But the number below, which is the paying people that were hired after the American Rescue Plan money came to us.
Correct.
So that number, where does that number go?
So the 22
The
million.
1.73638.
So the 22 million is the amount of contracts that are moved. And that amount of money, as well as the 1.7, will now be backed. That's gonna pay for the staffing during the COVID for people who have to come to work who meet the requirements of ARP rules. By doing that, you have 23,754,000 more general fund capacity. Of that 23 million, the 22,15,000, that is the amount of all of your new general fund contracts that we moved to the general fund from ARP.
Okay.
The 1.7 is pretty much that number minus West Terrace.
Okay.
We would have, had the state in ARP, received 1.738 million in additional indirects. And you could leave that there and over the next 2 years, slowly take it as it comes in. Our thought was we had more capacity of those salaries during the COVID era. Let's just deal with that now, one less accounting measure moving forward. And if anybody's project were to change, it would throw off that calculation.
The 173 moves up into the green section. It's part of the green section.
So it's the
So
second
it's
line.
included in the
above.
10 point.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you see the second line.
Okay, sorry. There's just a lot of different colored spreadsheets here. Okay, got it. But this is the most important one, right at the top.
But the
And the
top,
circled number.
the top is the roll up, everything, the
Got it.
bottom, little blue.
All these other
next to
things are
page.
rolled up into that.
Yes,
top.
that's the
Okay.
data that
Got it.
rolls up
Thank you.
into there. Chrissy tested me yesterday. I could explain all of it.
Wow, yeah. You ran them through all the.
You went line by line.
Good job, Chrissy.
It's good to be tested, to be able to explain it and point back. So Heather and I spent a lot of last week going back through these resolutions. That's why we have them now printed out in numerical order. So we could test. You will, the one kind of funny thing I'll point out is at the bottom of the log list on page 2, you'll see 30 cents. We did find 2 resolutions that we had Scrivener's errors, both in the cent column, which came to a net 30 cents. And instead of dealing with another way, we just threw it in the list. Because bottom line, the motion that you are, the resolution that you are voting on this afternoon says at the beginning, does hereby amend all previous resolutions, ARP resolutions as follows. So this is the new law. This is our one final, and you'll see we didn't do it by category. We did it by category and individual awardee. So it is at a little bit more detailed level than normal.
Commissioner Jordan.
Jeff, the uncommitted or unrestricted dollars that you're talking about coming back to the general fund, is my understanding correct that we no longer have the ARPA related timeframes on the commitment of those dollars going forward? Therefore, if we wanted to have a larger conversation about hydronic heat and other needs, we have the ability to do that.
Correct. The main reason we're doing all this is our awards and the ARP timelines are on different linear planes, so to speak. And this allows our awardees to have a little bit more flexibility as they complete their original scope of work. All original projects will be continued, but a byproduct of that is this 10,300,000 doesn't have timelines anymore. It is general fund dollars. The awardees are backed by general fund. We did keep them at a 2026, end of 26. So those contracts will expire at that point, but the 2024 deadline, they no longer have to jump through all of those hoops. Some of the hoops which have been moving as they try to jump.
Yeah, so I think, we'll look at that project for next week as we talk about what that number is to then know what the number for the project for the boilers would be.
So we'll table kind of those additional thoughts next week.
Yeah, because they're not part of this resolution.
Correct, they're not part. You have 10.316, the exact number there, that you can make the decision today, tomorrow. You could wait till 2025.
Yeah.
2035.
Part of that, especially for next week, just as we talk about how we fund that boiler project as to what we're choosing to do or not choosing to do to make all of it work. It's the same thing with capital, so.
The other thing I will point out, we'll have you all here on page 3, at the bottom, you see a bunch of IT stuff. That was moved into ARP to fully expend ARP, which freed up general fund. Again, because those were expenses made this year. And they qualified for ARP, but ARP is expiring, general fund isn't. So that 3.775 also was rolled up on the first page. Those are, you'll remember 3.5 was for administration and technology. So we were looking for things to put against these dollars to meet the deadlines. Again, increasing your general fund balance. Everything else, I think you will recognize, or if you have a question, you'll remember if you jog your memory on the resolutions. We will work with Matt on options. We apologize for the error. We actually did the math right, but we changed the wrong number. So we need to fix the number that shouldn't have been changed and apply it to the number right above that needed to be changed. And when you're taking from Excel to a Word document, formulas don't have you have to type them in. Sorry. Here's what it is.
Okay, we'll figure it out for this afternoon and you can let me know.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. It's because this resolution's on this afternoon.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you for continuing to work really hard, both of you, on this. Appreciate it. Okay, Jeff, you're still up.
With Ashley here. So Ron, I sent you a thing. This is on language access. About in 2023, Judge Zapone had put together a group with the courts. Just to talk through language access options. The outcomes of that group, they did put some new signage at our entrances. You'll see the annex in front of the courthouse when you go through security. There's signage in about 10 to 12 different languages that essentially tells me how to get to the translation office for more help. They went with the top languages that are used in the court system, not the top languages from the census data, which makes sense. A court equation for a court purpose.
And that's for the Spokane location. So they actually were tracking that, and so they were able to utilize their own data to support that decision because they actually put data.
So the signage, they also did some, they already had language line available, I believe, in most of their locations. They did some additional training, which has proven to be helpful based on feedback. And then they just said better usage of the translation office. And then the board requested that Ashley and I pull together a county-wide group, which included all of the departments that wrap up through the BOCC, as well as separately elected. And I believe every separately elected either attended or sent somebody. And then we had Judge Zapone kick off that first meeting with a wrap up of what they had done on that side. You want to talk through the?
Sure. So we discussed probably some of the main stuff, which was language line utilization and then digital signage. Before we went too far, there was some interest in language line and signage, but also we got some pretty good feedback that a lot of departments maybe wouldn't utilize this. And so rather than starting to make decisions and looking at costing and all of that stuff, before having data, we actually took that committee, those members, to go back and run essentially some data review for a couple of months on how many times we actually had a guest to any of our departments ask for language or need language assistance. What we found when we got that feedback is it was almost non-existent. Pretty much none of the departments had any requests other than prosecutor's office and public defender, which those offices already utilize language line and translators through the courts. And the auditor didn't have any occurrences, I believe, when we actually were doing the data timeframe, but they have in the past had some limited, especially in licensing, where they tend to maybe see it. So they do have, they would like to use the language line if it was made available to them. However, they don't have funding within their budget to support that request at this point. So with that data, it led us toward looking at, if there was an interest in the commissioners to allocate funds toward a language line, setting up kind of an all user that could access it if and when it was needed. The other thing that was discussed by the committee is digital signage, maybe just for the campus in general, not so much for the language itself. We would still have the options available because you can switch languages on the signage, but it really started to look a bit more like just campus signage, so kind of taking a different direction of the committee, so to speak. And really that would then go back to more of a signage type group, not so much a language group. And so that's where the committee has most recently landed. There was general consensus that there would be value in upgrading our signage in general on the campus to maybe some digital signage with a Google Zoom AI translation. But that's, again, pending budget capacity. High level look, it looks like we're probably going to come in, if we were to do a few different signage functionality, around $75,000 is what we think that spend would be. Again, we haven't dug too far into this yet, though, because we needed feedback from this group on whether or not you wanted us to continue moving forward with this project, recognizing that it looks maybe more like a digital signage rather than a full language. However, if you wanted to adopt the language line for the county, we could add in that as well and do a full, just utilization across the county if and when it's needed. That is on a pay for use basis, so we don't know what that looks like at this point.
And the 75,000, I'd say probably half of that would actually be for the equipment. Large touch screens do cost several thousand a piece. The other chunk of it is a total guess at this point. We need to talk with Gil to see, particularly like the front of the courthouse, is wiring electricity where we need it, where there need to be some infrastructure, wires pulled in, and there may not be, there might be outlets right there. But we wanted to wait for board feedback before we asked facilities what if any additional cost would be to prep areas. You would probably want to pull in Pat and communications for some thoughts on how we would run the signage, what would work there. So we could pull in some internal groups to give better feedback. And then procurement also gave us some do's and don'ts as far as reaching out for prices. And I had already done one of the don'ts, so I stopped.
Yep.
And we don't want to, we can get ourselves in a bind if we get too much information from one group.
What we found is from a compliance perspective, we are good where we're at from a language perspective. So this really does kind of shift the direction of this project. In the event that you guys would like us to move forward, it does take resources from other departments, from like communications. It would require us to have somebody continue to monitor, to update these signs regularly. So there is work that would come in on the back end. So we're looking realistically anywhere from 6 months to 12 months for this project to be probably up and running, understanding that there's a long list of other projects that these same departments are working on across facilities, stuff like that. So this would not be something we would be able to implement in the next couple of months. We would be looking at this hopefully by the end of 2025, if you guys would like us to continue to move in this direction.
Question, comment. The auditor was very interested in language line. The other separately electeds and groups don't have it, we're fine with it. Vicky was she felt it'd be very helpful in her office, and she also requested us to look into a digital component where you could do the video calling. She felt sometimes that could body language and translation.
Yeah, can I ask so when you're talking about the campus signage, you're talking about outdoor touchscreen signage, or is this in?
Kind of like in the vestibule lobby area here before security, the annex where you would come in public safety and public works. So the three entrances that have security, as well as the main entrance of public works. So you could have a screen that will have a campus map. You know, you are here, I need to get there to help find where you need to go. You could have a directory screen. I'm looking for Commissioner Kearns, go to first floor courthouse. If Commissioner Waldron, if you're in the right building, if you're in public work, go to second floor. And then you could have like a third or fourth screen that's just pushing messaging, you know, it's spring, our golf courses are open, blah, blah, blah. Our swim centers are gonna close in 3 weeks, get the kids there, you know, whatever current messaging is. You could put job announcements on it if we're hiring for certain things. So our thought was kind of two static, one being a directory, one being a map. And then either one or two options that could be cyclical depending on messaging that was current.
Oh, so thanks for all your work on this. I think I like the idea of those signs because even if you speak English on this campus, it's hard to find your way around. So I love the idea of a touch screen and being able to get it translated with the Google translation. So with the language line, it sounds like certain departments have it, but then, so I wasn't following very well. There's a proposal, maybe if you could have another language line account.
Yeah.
For the other customer facing entities on the campus.
Like the clerk has it up on 3, assessor, treasurer, auditor do not at this point.
Anybody who's considered court is required under RCW.
Right.
So for our court groups, and then the clerk folded in at I think last year, they got all of theirs taken care of. We are not required anywhere else to have a language line. And so we have not offered it to other departments. If they wanted to in the past, what we would say is if you want to as a department to have this, you can set up your own account. The way the accounts are set up right now is the reports pay for that utilization, right? So the departments utilize it, prosecutor's office has to pay their component, public defender pays theirs. So it's separated out into different budgets right now. If we go to a more broad, we would add an additional line potentially, which then departments could utilize. We would have to work with language line to figure out if there's a way to then identify the departments to make sure that if it's a general fund department, it's paying out of general fund. If it's an enterprise department, it's paying out of enterprise. So we did not get that far down the road yet, specifically because when we did the survey, we didn't have enough requests or need that it pushed the committee to walk that much further down the road. So we could go that direction. Like Jeff said, Auditor Dalton is interested in it. When her team brought the data forward, there was no data to support the request at that point in time. That said, it maybe a different time of year would have had a different utilization. So if that's the direction you want us to go, then we need funds to be given to someone's budget. I would recommend maybe there's an HR line item similar to like we do background checks and then we individually bill out the enterprise groups right now. We could look at it from that perspective where there's a general line that it gets billed to, and then we would have to reallocate out billing to funds that are not general fund and have someone in my office do that.
I didn't wanna, Justin Johnson's Community Services Group also has a language line
Yes.
product.
Oh.
They don't use language line,
Yep.
you know, Burger King versus McDonald's, just a different hamburger, so to speak. They use the same service that the state agencies use, so there's continuity for those customers. But all of the other groups, to our knowledge, actually use language lines, kind of like Escalator and Xerox. It actually is a company, but we also kind of use it as a thing.
I was just gonna say, also tie into the court navigators that we're working with MacArthur on. Might be a good tie-in with this as well. And there might be some MacArthur dollars that would be available to help with that portion of it.
It would probably have to stay in the court line, keep that separate, so we could look at that separately from the rest of the county, but likely couldn't mix with each other, I guess.
Chris, Commissioner Jordan.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thanks for the work with the committee as well. I appreciate the time that you guys have spent on it. I do agree with Commissioner Waldriff. It'd be great to get some of that additional signage up. It's as she mentioned, regardless of the language you speak, it can be hard to navigate your way around the campus and get where you're going. I know we all have people come up to us on a regular basis and say, how do I get here? How do I get there? So I think that'd be a good benefit for everyone. And if we could have a translation component to that somehow, I think that's value added. It seems on the language line piece that we have a number of departments that have either have a requirement or have made a decision that they want to have that available. We have at least one department that would like it but doesn't have it yet. It seems to me that it just makes sense that we would bring this all under a single county-wide contract. So everyone's got access to the same thing if they want it. So that's just my general feedback on that piece. Would like to see the auditor's office have it if they want it. I know Auditor Dalton has told me several stories, anecdotal, admittedly, about people who have come in and needed language assistance and they didn't have it available, and it created a real stressful environment in the lobby there. When I interviewed her for my county spotlight recently, she also reiterated that she would like to have that available. So I don't see why we wouldn't find a way to make that possible. And it just seems like it would be sensible to have it unified, available to any department that wants it.
A couple of comments I have is like, have we looked at other courthouses as to what they're doing? Because I know like Benton County and ones that I've been in and Yakima County have screens and have different ways that they do it. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Look, remember looking at California, especially Southern California, where it's incredible. And they had some state of the art, really nice stuff that I'm sure was.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, quite pricey. We looked around a bit, really more as background for the group, not at the level of what product have you used, usage, stuff like that.
I guess I would just like to have us call and talk to those counties, you know, just because they do have a diverse group. You know, just so we know kind of what's working for them, what's not. I mean, again, I don't want to just start going down this path and not have it work. And those are just two that I've been in that I've seen that they, as we've talked about it, they have those screens up and how useful they are or not.
We did well, I'd say one reason the group consensus was around the AI cost saving, of course. And also King County did some translation where they didn't go by the order of population. And they chose some lower populations and they got sued. And so by using AI, you know, most of them have what, 200 languages, give or take, in there. We're not making choices. We're using what the product supports. And with the possible exception of Marshallese, which is a little unique to our area, although most of them do have Marshallese on them, as I recall, but there's different dialect there. It's going to cover everything, but we're not making the decision. So it's kind of a win-win. It covers a lot of groups, but I think it also gives us some kind of legal cover that we're not making a decision. We're gonna go with language X, even though it's the 27th most spoken language in the country.
It also doesn't require another work process each year from one of my staff. So if we were to start narrowing it down to languages, there would be a sizable amount of work annually or biannually that would have to occur, reviewing census data, determining.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't have any problem with using the AI
Perfect.
at all. I mean, it's like, no, I'm just saying, just kind of paying attention to what screens are useful and how people touch them.
Adapted as they've
Yes.
gone a couple of years.
Yes, so I mean, that's all I'm saying is it's just worth talking to them to see what they are doing. What's working, if how much time does it really take to update it? Who's updating it, you know, just those things. It's like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can just talk to them and see what they've already done and how they're doing it. Yes, like I said, I know they're already doing it, you know, and I'm sure King County is already
King County has a lot of language product.
doing that as well. So, and then it's just trying to figure out how we pay for it.
Can I ask, so what type of information would you want on these? Is it just like clerk, third floor, you know, courts, third floor, you know, treasurer's office, first
like
floor,
maybe
commissioner's first floor, like, is that the
like
type
top
of
10.
information?
I'm here for a marriage license. I'm here to
Okay.
pay taxes, kind of collecting those top 5 to 10. Why do people come to the courthouse? And then those answers with the AI would be able to help a person, whatever language they understand, get that information. I need to go to the third floor here. I need to go to Public Works. They're kind of gathering. I'm sure that 80-20 rule, I'm sure 80% of the questions fall under courts and our multi-purpose center over here where cars, marriages, taxes.
That's why I say, I mean, Yakima, I remember it scrolls, but then you can do questions and touch it and stuff. So I mean, I think they'd be a really good one to talk about.
We could just pull our group back together and have everybody bring their top 2 frequent things and then parse that out. I think that would be very manageable.
So then how do we pay for it?
Again, this is an estimate, so it could be 75, could be more, could be less.
It could be considerably less if we don't have infrastructure, wire pulling, and just the nature of this old building gave us some pause on what I get into.
Commissioner Jordan?
Does the 75,000, it sounds like that's the upper bound. Does that include some kind of
We're assuming between 25 and 100, depending on infrastructure. Another big one is if you want to buy a plug and play service, it's going to be much more expensive than if we buy 4 large touchscreens. I've on Amazon. They were
Mhm.
1,500 to about 2,500 a pop. And then, but then I don't personally have the skill set to make them beautiful in the layout of the campus. That's where I'd be calling on Pat. Is it something you can do? Do we need to hire an outside person to create a digital campus map? So some of it would probably be one-time startup cost, but then, probably at least once a year, we'd need, and in real time, we'd have 2 commissioners on the second floor of this building. Now those same commissioners are over there. We need to have that real-time move as movements happen. But if we bought screens ourselves, could do more of it in-house, I'd say this is high end.
The only concern I do have right now is looking on the Amazon screens. You're not probably looking at thousands of people touching that screen a day. So the one thing, and Jeff and I just briefly talked about, but again, we haven't gone so far with this because we wanted your guys' feedback before we spent more of our time on this. But those Amazon touchscreens are usually for like your law office that maybe gets 20 people a day, not your courthouse that you're getting thousands, hundreds of people a day, thousands a month. So that's why for me, I'm a little nervous when I say 75,000. That's assuming we're looking at those sorts of screens. If we have to get something more high touch, high impact, I think this cost could be higher. But we don't know what we don't know right now.
The one solicitation I did before procurement scaled me back, we were looking at 5,000 to 7,000 a screen for indoor. In the 20s for outdoor when it's weather and all that. But if kind of what you see at the mall, if where things are, if that was interactive, a display kind of like that, you're looking at 5,000 to 7,000, and that was a year ago, close to. Now I pulled those numbers. That was a national company based out of Chicago. So there's probably some variation, but yeah, a screen that's built for use and abuse and kids coming to the courthouse who maybe aren't being watched, so they like to push buttons. We all know how kids and screens gravitate towards each other.
Push, but you mean hit.
So we do need the rugged version, so to speak. So probably somewhere between 2,000 a screen and 8,000 a screen, depending how rugged said screens are.
Does the 75,000 estimate basically assume some kind of professional service or something on the graphic in the startup?
Kind of. I mean, it's truly just the swag, as we call it. We sat around with the knowledge we had. And like I said, we came in between 25 and 100. I kind of put that down on here as a high end of that. We can do a bit more research, talk with Gil, talk with Patrick. Come back with a bit more detail. It'll probably still be on the guesstimation side of things, but maybe a bit more scientific.
Yeah, I would recommend, I think we need a little bit more information to know how much it's gonna cost and what it's gonna do. And like I said, Yakima was the one that I really noticed that would be similar to what I think we're talking about, so I think that. And find out, how many screens,
Which screens get the most use?
They internally had somebody that created the content.
Yeah.
That was able to be put up there, or if they had to contract that out.
So it sounds like there's a will to get a little bit more feedback, try to narrow down the dollar amount to a more precise guess.
It's kind of, it comes out of fund balance or it comes out of air.
And it's not statutorily required, I guess is the other thing, from a staffing perspective, is my worry.
To be, especially the one-time startup cost, you could look at this, we talked about for the other things, or fund balance. Those are the only options we have identified.
I think we would need to know before next Monday if we're
You
gonna.
can get as much as we can get by next week for that discussion to better inform it. I think we should be able to connect with those other counties and we can do a bit more.
On the electrical or.
Yeah, we'll talk with Gil, get a sense of electrical's right there or it's not. I think that will be one big piece. Patrick on capabilities. We need to hire outside and make a couple phone calls, what that would look like. we can reach out to other counties, Yakima, Franklin, Benton, King.
And I think theirs were all on the wall. They were not.
We've been mostly looking at wall mounted. Those are cheaper than the
Yes.
the
Then I think
ball kind of.
Kind of keeps the little
standalone.
kids away from it that are
Yes.
just touching. So I think the ones I've seen have been on the wall. So. Anyway, okay. Thank you. Miscellaneous. No. Okay. Well, we've got executive sessions for this afternoon, so we're anticipating an hour.
I think so. Yeah, we've got about an hour's worth.
Probably about an hour's worth of executive sessions just to get that on everyone's calendar. Okay, then we will adjourn for the morning.